Sanders with a lot of time. Throws it out to the right side, has a completed pass to Travis Hunter, and Hunter's still on his feet, dancing around, making a gain of 17.
This is 365 Sports, powered by SicEm365.com.
Jones throws, he's got his receiver open, Badger spins, and Badger stayed on his feet and got the first down.
365 Sports is presented by IdealMRI.com. High-quality MRIs for $497 or less. IdealMRI.com. Your health is important, so is your budget.
Delora, deep down the middle, got his man. Cowing, touchdown, Arizona.
365 Sports is also brought to you by Texas Farm Bureau Insurance, protecting Texans since 1952.
Penix looks to the end zone, and it's caught. Odunze, spectacular catch.
Have you subscribed to our YouTube channel? Search 365 Sports on YouTube. Brought to you by TFNB, your bank for life.
Quarterback keeper, rising with a seam. He's into the red zone. He's inside the 10.
365 Sports is turbocharged by Unite Private Networks. Find out more at uniteprivatenetworks.com.
Nix, pump fake, takes off. Into the clear. Bo Nix. There he goes. He won't be caught. He's done it again.
Now here's David Smoak, Paul Catalina, and Craig Smoak.
Well, here we go. This Wednesday afternoon, 3 until 6 Central. And here we are, Paul Catalina, Craig Smoak, and I'm David Smoak on 365 Sports. A lot of nice news. Interesting. ASU and West Virginia are now best buddies. And in fact, West Virginia AD Wren Baker will join us today. Iowa State's Director of Athletics, Jamie Pollard, today at 3:30. Billy Embody, who covers SMU. And I asked him earlier about this at least speculation. I said, how much of that takes up your day? He said every breathing moment of it, as far as trying to track down what's going on possibly with SMU. News at Ohio State AD Gene Smith. Dan Hope joins us, also Paul's top five. Let's start with this, though. Yesterday, Baylor Director of Athletics Mack Rhoades was on the show with us in a very lengthy segment. Craig's kind of summarizes all of it and puts it up on the site, SicEm365.com, with kind of cliff notes. But here's the comment about revenue sharing with Mack Rhoades yesterday on this show. So the incoming 4 schools are guaranteed a full share, correct?
Yeah, they will be, and they'll be a full share member.
And after that, he goes into something else.
Okay. So he said that. What I was asking about was the first year of when the Pac-12 schools and the 12 schools that are a part of the conference minus Texas and Oklahoma come together. And so we put up a note that said Mack Rhoades was saying that the incoming 4, Houston, Brigham Young, UCF, and Cincinnati, were going to get the full share in the second year of their existence, 24-25, which is not the case. And so the Big 12 called me. Bob Berta, who's the director of information for them, called me, and I put this up earlier today on my Twitter timeline, received a call from Bob Berta on the Mack Rhoades comment that 16 teams will receive equal revenue sharing in 24-25. He actually never said 24-25. Berta told me that it was not the case, that the incoming Pac-12 teams will receive a full share because of Autonomy 5 in 24-25. And the schools like Houston, BYU, Cincinnati, and also UCF, they will continue to get what is a prorated or a partial share. I think it's $18 million this year, up to $19 million in 24-25, and then a full share with everybody in 25 and 26. So I wanted to clarify that because a lot of people got on that and thought, man, that's great. If you're Brigham Young, you're going to go from making $18 million to next year making $29 or $30 million, or if you're UCF, Houston, or Cincinnati.
No, they're still gonna. That was always the plan. But
because those 4 schools, Craig and Paul, they're the ones that voted on the full share for the incoming Pac-12, knowing ESPN and Fox were going to go all in.
Yeah, so that was always the plan the whole time with ESPN and Fox, and that nothing changed. I mean, other than everybody thought that might be getting more money a year earlier. No, nothing's changed. Everything's still as it was as far as the first 4 that have come in, but the next 4, because they were an A5 conference, they're getting the full share. So that's the difference. If you got scared by that, sorry, or excited, but that's just how it is. So,
yeah, that's I can see where that would come across as incredibly confusing on Twitter. I guess it's nice to have some clarity, and I guess to reiterate that the 4 new schools, well, you got to kind of clarify that too, because, hey, there's 8 schools that are joining in the last year or, within a span of a year. So, the A5 designation means that the PAC schools get full share right away starting next season, and a year wait for the 4 schools, BYU, UCF, Houston, and Cincinnati. So, hopefully that clears things up. I saw a lot of y'all's back and forth and whatever that you were having and others were having, and I was just confused because, like I said, on Twitter, a lot of that stuff can get kind of convoluted. Nice to have Bob Berta reach out and provide some clarity for everybody, so now we're all on the same page here.
I went from Bob Berta's calling us so we can have Brett Yormark on the show today to making sure that we clarified that. And I had reached out to Bob yesterday. It might have even been Sunday evening. I'm not sure. He wasn't able to get back to me because of he's kind of busy too, as you could imagine. But there we are with that. 95% of the schools that are coming in this year said, hey, we're still getting much more than we were getting before. And about 5% of fans were like, well, this is kind of awkward. I was asked today on a show at Salt Lake City, Dan Grimble, who's very, very good at what he does, well, why would Utah or Arizona State, who kind of, why would they get a full share? The bottom line with that is that was a part of making sure you're not going back through, okay, who are we going to add next? You are filled at 16, no matter what they might do with basketball, if they do. And so even though Utah and Arizona State may have looked around and like, okay, what's for next? They could have gone back to the Pac-12, and then that conference is even more alive than it is maybe today.
Well, it's why?
It's really simple. Like, how are you going to get them if you didn't promise them, a full share? I think that probably played into it as well. Mm-hmm. If you tell them they're going to wait, they're going to be like, we're going to wait a year or two to we're stay where we are. Yeah, so I think that's part of the pull as well was, that would be the case, that they would get that money right away.
Well, that and the fact that I think that from the very beginning with ESPN and Fox, that was what they told them from like back in March when all this was coming up. Like, that's what Sam Kahn said, is that, look, the plan was for, if you add, like, say they added Memphis would have gotten the same deal as BYU, Cincinnati, UCF, and Houston. If you add Arizona and Arizona State, they're getting the full share right away because they're already in the Autonomy 5.
Well, they were up to the first 2, and then they had to kind of also ask, okay, is it okay for 4?
Yeah. But so they had to do that. So that's why, because of a decision, because when the Big East collapsed and the other 5 got together and said, all right, we're the Autonomy 5, we're going to make the decisions and everybody else can go along with it. So because of that decision years ago, that's why they're worth more now, in spite of them, really kind of slow walking their way into the conference.
Yeah, they're an Autonomy 5, and that's what Bob told me, and that's what we've heard. Because of an Autonomy 5, that kicks in the pro rata that comes from ESPN, and eventually also Fox involved too. So remember what Ray Anderson said about the game in Morgantown, that he was going to send his deputy AD to Morgantown, and we put that up yesterday. In fact, I think we even played the audio. Well, I had reached out to Wren Baker, I think Sunday night or Monday, to ask him if he could be a part of the show. He did respond this afternoon. He will join us today at 4:30, and I bet this is what allowed that to happen. Not that he couldn't have been a part of the show 2 days ago. According to Nick Lowe, this is from Arizona Sports. Dear Gordon G., WVU Alumni Association, West Virginia University of West Virginia students, both Mike Crow and I would like to apologize, that's Ray Anderson, for comments that ASU leaders made about your school a few days ago. Please accept this donation to your campus food bank. We are grateful you supported our Big 12 move. Go Devils.
Yeah, this was, and we talked about it before, even if Ray Anderson was kidding, you don't get to be the guy who makes the joke when you kicked and screamed your way out of the other conference, and you don't get to do that. You just kind of have to go, yeah, well, it's going to be tough going to Morgantown, especially, and it's not even about, they took that shot at West Virginia, but they were completely negligent of the, Ray Anderson doesn't want to go, and he's going to be one of the highest paid people who goes. The softball players and volleyball players and track athletes and everybody else got to go. The football players have to go. The basketball players have to go. But you're not going to go? Like, sorry. Like, it's just not a good joke by joke standards, and not a comment he needed to make.
Garrett, do you have an image of the letter? I know it's somewhat, but there was a full-blown letter that Arizona State sent to West Virginia.
Yeah, I think he misstepped clearly and needed to, probably put something out there to calm down the Mountaineer fans and just make a better better second impression than he made a first impression. It was, I don't think a joke. I think he was pretty serious, actually. But that's some of that arrogance that's just going to have to get rectified one way or another. You're either going to learn to deal with the new folks you're working with, or you're going to, have to probably find something else to do. So I like that Mack Rhoades joked, if he was joking, about the fact that Arizona State's first year, we'll probably see them going to Morgantown for a football game. I mean, and I think that's the kind of petty, SEC level stuff that actually adds some spice to things like that and makes it more fun than just a stupid story we forget about 24 hours later or stay mad about. I don't have, any ill will against Ray Anderson. I can't speak for West Virginia fans. He did speak kindly of other places. He's like, well, I'll go here. I'll go to the Texas schools and things like that. So, yeah, it was pretty much directed at them, and I'd be defensive a bit if I were the Mountaineers. So I like the way that Wren Baker fired off his tweet, showing a beautiful West Virginia skyline. And, mentioning how if you've never been there, then you wouldn't understand, was basically his message. And so maybe at some point, Ray Anderson finds himself in the beauty of Morgantown, West Virginia, and the surrounding areas for a game of some sort. But I like that he walked it back and didn't take long to do it, and realized that it was a mistake and not a great first step to take with one of the fan bases here in the conference. But no big deal over the long run, and glad that's been settled.
Do you know what they donated? Did you watch? Did you read it? They donated $700 in applesauce, apple vinegar, and 60-plus other food products from the 2 ASU alumni to help feed West Virginia University students.
All right.
They're about to say Apple streaming for a second there, but no.
Yeah, free Apple
That's
streaming.
cool, too, though. They did that other thing instead. But, no, that's great. I mean, feeding people or, giving back's always a great thing, no matter in this case, it's not like there's some evil reason or anything. So that's a good resolution, and I'm sure that he and Wren Baker will shake hands and the schools will be fine. But I do think that, hey, there's a little seed for a little rivalry. If you want to start, who's going to have ill will against one another, I don't know that it's enough to really fuel a full-blown rivalry. But, hey, there'll be a little extra sauce if they do, in fact, send the Sun Devils to Morgantown next year. There'll be a little backstory that wasn't there before, so that's good, and then that'll add to it.
Hey, look, John Denver doesn't sing a song about Arizona. That's all I'm saying.
You're right. Charles Chamberlain, BYU voting for Utah to get more money than BYU is a classic BYU thing to do. And I know there was this back and forth. About, well, BYU all of a sudden, because of the thought that they were going to get an equal share next year, was like, man, well, Utah, remember, they didn't get a full share, I don't think, for probably 2, 3, 4 years when they entered the Pac-12. So all teams have been there, not everybody, but have been there before. Now, of the teams left in the Pac-12, one of them is Washington State. Their president, Kirk Schultz, sat down with Pete Thamel for an interview, a lengthy article. Here are some of the quotes. Acknowledged his school's athletic program is at a bad spot, facing the harsh reality in the wake of the Pac-12 defections. It's like a breakup. It's awkward. No one wants to sit there for too long. When everything went down on Friday, he texted athletic director Pat Chun, we've got to roll up our sleeves and get to work. Also, keeping all the irons in the fire. At the end of the day, this is interesting here, at the end of the day, us doing something on the East Coast, unless it's a hell of a lot of money, there's just no way to make it work, in reference to the possibility of anything with the ACC. although it's been mainly what Cal and Stanford have been brought into it. It may be the two of us accept an invitation to the Mountain West, speaking of Oregon State, I'm sure, and we rely on private dollars to make sure our budgets are at the top of the league. And then on USC and UCLA's departure, that's what did it. That's what did us in the end, not just the last week. People had feet in both camps.
Yeah, I mean, I think that last line is really interesting because there's a lot of trying to blame the Big 12 going on still. There's a lot of trying to blame the Big 10. And look, I think there's equal disbursement of who you want to point the finger at, but I think you have to start with the Pac-12. I mean, and that's where it all begins and ends, was with their decisions along the way. And I don't think at this point many would argue with that. So you can assign blame elsewhere. Yeah, of course, if the Big 10 didn't come grab Washington and Oregon, none of this happens, except for Colorado still moves. Colorado still goes. That was going to happen regardless. But, if the Big 12 doesn't have this, appetite for the other three, then, it's probably turns out differently. But all of those were a part of the equation. And you had the biggest, piece of it all, which was, some misguided leadership or lack of leadership. And that's why they are where they are. I mean, I'm glad to hear that he's, putting out a confidence about their sports programs, and they'll, private funding, they'll still be able to compete. But obviously that's a tough pill to swallow going from the Pac to potentially the Mountain West. I do feel like those two will be, among the elites at that level, but I know that's not really making anybody feel any better. I'm not going to try to put lipstick on a pig here because the situation's a pig. I mean, it is. You were in the Pac-12. All of that made sense for you in every way, shape, and form, and now you're looking at a completely different, a universe that you'll be settling into potentially. So, yeah, brutal for them, but good to know that they're not going to be like, all right, the football's shuddering and, some of the really extreme fears that one might come up with in their heads. That's not going to be the case for them, but they still do have some major questions to answer.
Yeah. I actually, in regard to Washington State, I posted this on Twitter today, and I was not trying to take shots. I mean, a couple of Cal fans got upset, and I've had exchanges with them, but, if I'm the ACC,
you took on the entire Cal fan base.
Yeah, just kidding. But yeah, that's kind of what it felt like. No, but they, if I'm a conference and I've got two teams coming in, if I'm the ACC and I want better football games, at least in the near future, I'd rather have Wazzu and Oregon State than Cal and Stanford. Now, the Cal fans that got mad at me were like, "Oh, well, we have this great history," and I'm like, "Yeah, but I'm not the only one who's noticed this, and I'm not a decision maker. Like the television power brokers noticed this as well, that they've got this big, gigantic market in the Bay Area that's tons of people, and the two schools that are in it don't draw very well, and they don't get very good television ratings. So when the decision was made to leave them behind, it was made because of that. Because if you just take it on the surface, then you should just go to add every major school in every major city and leave out every college town because I don't know if you've ever been to Opelika, Alabama, but it's not exactly a bustling hub of humanity like San Francisco is.
It's a beautiful city with a lot of great golf courses.
No, but, but that's what it is. So
I know, yeah.
I'm not making digs here. It's just
I think most college towns are obviously they're not like what. Like the bigger schools now, some of the towns that are cities, the Big 12 has added. Cincinnati is a large city.
No, like Columbus, Ohio has turned into a gigantic city.
But Tucson area, I mean, then you have Orlando now with UCF.
Yeah. So those things all happen if you do that on the surface. So and that's why I feel really bad for Washington State and Oregon State, because they've clearly, as a fan base and a university, made a commitment, especially in football, to being good and to being aggressive and trying to win the conference title, as where Stanford and Cal are kind of caught in stasis here, and they're the ones who are getting talked to about the ACC. When again, if I'm the ACC and I'm thinking like, what's a better game, Clemson versus Cal or Clemson versus Oregon State playing? I mean, it won't be DJU, but that to me would be a better game.
Yeah, I think the whole Silicon Valley aspect got a little overvalued during this whole process, and not to say that there's not some value to it. There clearly is, but it's just overvalued in the grand scheme of things. They weren't quite layups, if you will. And, still, though, there is obviously an attractiveness there, whether it be the history or Silicon Valley or the locations or, whatever you want to chalk it up to. There is interest clearly by the ACC. So, unfortunately for Oregon State and Washington State, they're sort of at the mercy now of what's going to happen there and what that does in turn to Cal and Stanford. And so there's still, some questions that need to be answered that lead to answers of other questions. And for Oregon State and Washington State right now, they're not first in line to go ahead and just make their choice and move along. They've got to kind of be at the mercy for a little while, but hopefully not too long.
The 8 teams that are now the original of the Big 12, although TCU was not a part of it, another West Virginia at the beginning, they had days when they probably felt not quite as isolated as Oregon State and Washington State, but there were days where everybody around the Big 12 that wasn't Texas and Oklahoma, even Texas Tech or Oklahoma State, no matter bigger schools, whatever, they had to also wonder, or KU. Well, let's skip ahead, Garrett, when you get that one up, because this is news on Texas A&M and their NIL fund. This just came down from On3. The 12th Man Plus Fund, which was long thought to be the next evolution of NIL collectives, is being discontinued. The move comes after discussing the IRS memo released back in early June with advisors. And you wonder how many others are in that same perhaps circle or in that bubble that might have to look at that as well.
What I'm curious to hear is, what is it now? Because it's not like the collective's going away. That particular fund is going away. The way that they were doing it is going away. And
they'll just shift the money somewhere else?
They'll just shift it and do it a different way. And then they'll probably lose a couple of donors who thought, oh, this will be my tax write-off, making my football team better. Mm-hmm. They'll probably lose a couple. But ultimately, the people who are going to be in that, the smart ones anyway, knew that this was a temporary time. The window was going to close. The IRS eventually gets around to everything, especially when that is. And I think even those of us who are the most novice TurboTax users knew that, all right, I don't know how long you could say this is a charitable donation when you're like, okay, what charity are you donating to? Oh, Texas A&M. Oh, what about Texas A&M? Are they like a cancer research fund, or are they doing something for the environment, or cleaning up an oil spill, or what? No. I wanted a running back, and he's gonna show up at Habitat for Humanity a couple times and hammer some nails and take a picture and get the F out.
You wonder if this is the first of many.
I mean, I don't know how I'll be honest. I don't keep up with all the NIL stuff, like, every T crossed and I dotted. It's not a thing that's super interesting to me, like the funds themselves and like the operations themselves. So I don't know what's even closely considered to be, similar to what A&M does. But I think it goes to show you that, laws and some government, cage rattling can make the whole operation slow down real quick and change course all of a sudden, right? And that's why their saving grace for the whole operation is to have the government basically come in and say, here's what's allowed and here's what's not allowed, because that's about the only thing that's going to stop this. Without the government becoming involved, is this fund still operating? Is it going forward as it was meant to be? Yeah, absolutely it is. But obviously then there became some repercussions that they weren't going to go toe-to-toe with, and it's like, all right, we're going to go ahead and shut this on down. So, yeah, that's a sign of that's about the only way you can really stop most of this, but I don't know if it, really means anything for the whole other landscape, but certainly an interesting story and one that will need some follow-up.
We have some super chats we will get to even from yesterday, and I know that we have 2 more, and we will try to get to those too. We have a busy schedule of guests, but we do need to do that because yesterday we were not able to do that. A couple of other quick notes. There was thoughts about Clemson in a board meeting tonight. This from Caitlin Harrington, who covers Clemson. Quick reminder, today's board meeting is the compensation committee, and the sole action item is academic leadership salary. Academic does not pertain to athletics, as salary does not pertain to leaving the ACC.
At least not today, it doesn't. No, it wasn't. We'll see. I still think that even those other 6 schools that joined Florida State back in the spring and raising concern will let Florida State make all the noise until they figure out what they're doing, and then they'll be like, yeah, we were with you the whole time.
What he said. Yeah, exactly.
Because that's how this works, is you're going to let somebody be the bad guy for a little while until they can figure out their evil plan or whatever it is, and then you're going to stand by them and go, good idea, bro.
Yeah, absolutely.
Like the Big Ten sat back and watched, the Big 12 kind of do their work for them,
yes.
and then swooped in and delivered the death blow.
Yeah.
I think that there's still more to come with the ACC. I just don't think it's as urgent as, what was happening with the Pac here recently. I mean, obviously there's still the what I guess the possibility of Cal and Stanford still in the works as well, or SMU. I mean, I guess that's still out there from yesterday. So there's some options on the table before Florida State makes like a final decision on anything. But yeah, they're not going to stop shaking the cage, and there's more to come there for sure.
All right, real quickly, you guys rapid fire, and I mean it because Jamie Pollard's going to call it any time. Yesterday, Chris, which new Pac-12 school incoming will be Baylor's best rival?
Colorado.
They've played before, back in the day when the Big 12 was first formed, and may have played even before then.
Yeah, that probably makes – I can see Arizona and like Texas Tech automatically adding up.
But he asked about
history.
Baylor specifically, though.
Huh?
He asked about Baylor
No, I know. I'm just saying like down the line. So I don't think Arizona would be one, even though there's a Mac Rhodes connection. Not that you're limited to one. But, yeah, I think Colorado probably makes the most sense just because there's an amount of history there.
In your opinion, who has the worst of the athletic facilities in the Power Five?
I have no idea.
I don't either.
No clue. I don't follow everybody closely enough to have any idea on who's where and what at this point. Yeah, it would be totally pulling one out of nowhere to assume who's got the worst right now.
The first one was from Chris. The second one, MC Gusto. Our retired stockbroker just sent us money. Thank you. We will never turn that down. You don't have to, but we appreciate it. And then, Chris, how amazing would the ACC versus Big 12 basketball be? As far as if they were to have some sort of a basketball, like you see with the Big 12 has had the SEC and they've had others, it would be unbelievable.
I'd actually prefer that to the SEC matchup most of the time, to be quite honest with you, especially the way with the conference it is now when you've got Arizona and Houston coming in to replace Texas and Oklahoma, at least basketball-wise, notoriety-wise. And the other schools will have their good runs and everything. Cincinnati's had good runs. Everybody else has. But,
Kansas State.
Yeah. But,
Yep.
I mean, I'm just saying they're already here.
Yeah.
But,
yeah.
So, yeah, I would rather see, Duke versus Kansas. Well, they kind of play each other anyway all the time. But I'd rather see Duke and Arizona or North Carolina and Kansas or, Syracuse and Baylor, those kind of things.
Yeah, it'd be awesome. More basketball, matchups with big-time programs who are big-time currently, not just, 30 years ago, is great. And obviously the ACC's had immense amounts of success 30 years ago in present day, and the Big 12, especially present day, didn't even exist 30 years ago. But present day, it's amongst the top. So, yeah, I think the more matchups like that you could get would be great. The SEC challenge has been cool, but, pivoting and doing Big 12 ACC, especially right now, would be some fantastic hoops, I'd imagine.
Mr. TW, the major media corps wanted the realignment, not the fans, not the students, not even the majority of us. This is nothing but a Wall Street-type move that will eventually clap back. The game may not change, but it's innocent. Its innocence has. I agree with you, even though it's part of change and part of the way things are. And in the way, the traditions and me and the memories, a lot of that's being reinvigorated with the SEC, with Oklahoma, Texas. But, yeah, I get it. I do.
Yeah, I mean, there's some parts that I think we think are innocent that aren't so much. So I don't know that it's always been just like innocent, but I understand your point. And you're right. It's unfortunate, and it is the corporate overlords, so to speak, pulling all the strings and making a lot of these moves happen. I know that's where a lot of the angst in the direction has been in terms of pointing the finger at the PAC moves in particular. So, yeah, you hate to see it, but that's just sort of the way the world works and doesn't make it right. But that is the way that it is. And until something, changes that way of how the world works and how, particularly American business works, I think that's just, it was inevitable almost, in some ways. And maybe we can't turn back time and 10 years from now, it's back to more of what it was when we see the error of our ways. But, cross your fingers on that.
Iowa State Director of Athletics, Jamie Pollard, with us on 365 Sports. Jamie, thank you so much. When you blink a little bit, is it hard to imagine with the conference the Big 12 is today and will be next year to where it was those dark days in the summer of 2021?
Well, how about those dark days of 2009 and 10 as well? Yes, sir. It is. It's been a long and windy road.
How quick, when you guys were always planning to be ready for any expansion when it popped up, but from your perspective, how fast did this really move?
Well, it feels like it moved really, really slow personally, because it seems like we've talked about it for a year at least. But the last probably 48 hours were pretty intense, and there were a lot of ebbs and flows in that last 48 hours, I think that, most people wouldn't know or appreciate. So that part, I think, went pretty fast.
Macros told us that just he personally felt like, Colorado was a must-have, but it was all about getting all 4 schools, and anything less than that wouldn't have felt like really completing the job, so to speak, or wouldn't have been as fulfilling. Did you feel that kind of the same way? Just sort of what was your operating, thoughts when it came to all of the potential ways this could have gone in combinations, but in fact ending up with the 4 that everybody kind of originally pegged?
Well, I'm going to first start with, I have a little somberness here just because I'm not, in a lot of ways, I wish we weren't in a situation where some of our peers or colleagues are being left behind and that the Pac-12's gone away, or potentially it's going to go away. I was one that said all along, I didn't wish for that, but if it was going to happen, I wanted us to be well-positioned. And well-positioned was to go to 16 and to get presumably the 4 schools we ended up getting. But then as the process drug on and drug on and drug on, Colorado was the only one at that time that seemed like they were doing it for more than just the money. They were doing it because I think they felt like philosophically they aligned more with the Big 12, where the others, I think, were still tethered to trying to make the Pac-12 work. And so it started to feel like it might just be Colorado. And so, Mac's thoughts of it would have felt incomplete, I maybe had come to grips with it was going to be incomplete.
Mm-hmm.
And when that reemerged that those 3 could possibly be coming as well, to me it was like a shot of energy, because I, quite frankly, had kind of given up on that. I in my mind, I had just gotten to the spot where I didn't think it was going to happen. I just didn't think it was going to happen. And so that's what I refer to. That last 48 hours got to be pretty rapid fire that, my gosh, it's going to happen.
Jamie, the way the revenue is going to be shared, not this year with the 4 incoming schools getting a partial, $18 million, whatever the number might be, but next year with the incoming 4 out of the Pac-12 Autonomy 5 schools getting a full share, and the others are going to be, again, a partial share with a little bit of an uptick in how much. Was there a lot of discussion, or was that a problem at all, that the 4 schools coming in this year were like, wait a minute, we're already here. Why would we have to not get a full share in 24-25?
No, never was brought up by any of those schools. I think how they look at it is you got to remember where each of the schools is coming from. Those schools, the 4 that are joining this year or joined this year, even though they're not getting, quote, the full share for these first 2 years, they're getting a lot more than they would have been getting had they stayed where they were. So, it's all just kind of a point of what's relevant. It's no different than when you're hiring people. Sometimes then later and gets more money because that's what it took to get them. And so, the 4 new schools that'll be coming in from the Pac-12, just had a different starting point from where they're starting from. And so the 4 schools, if we're going to call, there's the newer and then the newer. So the new members that are in this year, they were great. They never raised that issue. They recognized what it meant to go get the 4 schools from the Pac-12, and those 4 schools, are deserving of what they're going to get. And when it's all said and done, we'll all be sharing equally.
Jamie, I received a tweet on Friday when all this was going on. It was from somebody that said, I don't know what the Iowa State fans, how they're going to react to a game in Tempe. They've never seen anything like that before. And I said, I don't know, man. Have you ever partied with the Iowa State crowd? Like, they've seen a lot. Like, that can go wild. How has your fan base kind of reacted to all this, and how do you feel about how they'll move forward and travel like they usually do pretty well?
Well, our fan base, is excited about it. I mean, excited from just the mere fact it's great that Iowa State and the Big 12 is on the right side of this. Secondly, I just think fans are genuinely, all fans, just are genuinely excited by the fact that there's kind of like new blood. it's not same old, same old. And so I think that that's going to be a little spark for all of us, because there's going to be new road trips, new rivalries, that will emerge. At the same time, I think our fans are very respectful of just understanding that, there's a little form of relief and not as much excitement when other schools got left behind. And I appreciate that our fans have actually acknowledged that, because the fact is we could have been and almost were in 2008 and could have been again in 2020, had the same lot in life that Oregon State, Washington State, and Cal and Stanford are going to have. So I think all of that is rolled up in the emotion, but genuinely speaking, our fans are fired up. We've got a great fan base. That's a lot of snowbirds down in the Phoenix area. So both our trips to Tucson and Tempe will be well attended by Cyclone fans, I'm sure. And Colorado, that's a drivable road trip for a lot of our fans, and we did that back in the day.
Mm-hmm.
And Utah, I think the Utah fan base for football especially is very much like the Cyclone fan base. Very much in social media. They pack their stadium. They're very active. So I'm excited, and I think our fans are too.
Obviously, a lot of people had a hand in making all this happen in the end for the Big 12's benefit. And I know in your statement you spoke about Bob Bowlesby and the job that he did on his way out of bringing in the initial 4 schools that helped stabilize everything. And I know that many have said, hey, if you just stopped there, everybody would have been happy. But then there's Brett Yormark and this other vision. When you first kind of started to wrap your head around this next iteration and this 4 corners vision and other ideas that he's had, can you just speak, Jamie, to kind of your initial thoughts and now having seen a lot of it progress, the Rucker Park basketball, the 4 corner schools, so on and so forth, and what still may be to come. Can you just kind of wrap your head around, the tenure so far and all the different hands that made all this possible?
Well, organizations need different forms of leadership at different times. And what Bob Bowlesby did for us at that particular moment, I don't think any of us fully fathomed how important that was. And now we've seen it play out, that he laid the foundation and kept the Big 12 together and put us in a position with, the opportunity to have what we're now experiencing. And then, when Commissioner Yormark came in, he's a different set of leadership skills, different vision. And he has put, his imprint on this, and a very aggressive, clearly a big marketer, a big thinker. And, we're seeing a lot of that come to fruition. And so, again, excited about what is in store for the future, because we've seen what he's accomplished in his first year. And, you can only imagine what the next year and the next year could look like. So buckle up. We're going to be on for a great ride. And there'll be some things that'll not work, and there'll be some things that'll be a huge hit. And it'll be fun to play it all out.
Were the 4 schools who joined in the pack of what we now know, Colorado, ASU, Arizona, and Utah, were those the only 4, Jamie, the Big 12 really thought they could bring in and also wanted?
Well, those were let's start with Colorado. Deserves a lot of credit because, quite frankly, they went alone. And they did it, they were the unicorn. They were the Lone Ranger. And they set, you could argue they set a lot of this in motion, but they were the one that went out there. And, if the Pac-12 had signed that television deal last Friday, Colorado would have been in the Big 12 and wouldn't have been part of that. So, first of all, that was where we were focused initially, because we felt like that one could lead to possibly more. Or if not, we talked about other schools that could fill that final spot. And then as it started to emerge, Arizona, I think, was probably next in line as far as showing the initial kind of interest. But then it quickly escalated because of the Oregon-Washington timing with the Big Ten, that it became Arizona, Arizona State, Utah as kind of a package deal. So we never really had to fully vet just Arizona as 14, or was it going to be UConn as 14 if, Arizona didn't come. And it never really went past that. It was those kind of the package of those 3, or Arizona as 14 or UConn as 14. And that was really where the focus was.
Jamie, when do you think it is time for the leaders of college athletics to maybe get together and try to figure out what the goal is long term so that we don't have to keep reshuffling the deck here?
Well, that's a great question. And quite frankly, it's maybe a question that's being asked too late because, the deck has been shuffled in a way now that, the game of cards are going to be different than what the game one might have been 3-4 years ago. And, history is going to judge that either positively or negatively. I think today, it's tough to judge it either way. You have to live in the moment, and this is the cards we're dealt, so we got to play those. But I am one that feels like, I wish we wouldn't have gotten to this spot, that calmer heads could have maybe prevailed and found a solution that didn't leave people behind. But quite frankly, you could see it starting to crumble during COVID, where, the 5 commissioners just weren't always on the same page. And you saw that play out, and it was probably foreshadowing to what we're seeing now, which is kind of every league for themselves. And I don't think that's in the best interest of college athletics, but I'm one voice, and, I'm part of a much bigger ecosystem that is bigger than one voice.
Mac yesterday was on with us, Mac Rhodes, and we brought up, is this it? Is this where the expansion ends? And we know about UConn. You brought that up as well. That was obvious. I know Brett Yormark that's kind of like his toy in a way. How is that something that if it in fact happens, it would be not in the near future, and at some point, whenever anything else changes, you go, okay, that's probably what we need to do?
Well, if I've learned anything in 18 years being AD, be careful what you say because you're wrong the next morning. But it's my understanding that, it's done for the foreseeable future because there's no money left. Okay. The television partners are done spreading money around and sprinkling it. We're going to have, this may rear its head again with the next television iteration in 2030-31. But my understanding, I don't anticipate anything between now and that time period because there's just not any money in the system to do it. And all of us are leveraged enough without diluting ourselves any further. So I just don't see it, in our world. Now, maybe it'll happen out with the ACC. That's their issue to deal with. But as far as the Big 12, there is no more wind out there for our sails at this point with the television partners.
You have had to deal with the newness and what is now today's college athletics, with what's happening with college. We've had the Alabama coach. You've had to deal with the gambling aspect of what is going on. How much have you had to spend even more time than normal making sure the education is there for everybody, that this is just something you cannot do?
Well, I think it was eye-opening because we were educating, and the student athletes have admitted, every single one of them admitted that they were educated. They knew they couldn't do it, but they still did it. And it's been fascinating talking to them because to them, they've referred to it as like it's a video game. And there's no money exchanging hands. There's no chips you're putting into the middle of the poker table. There's no cash you're putting out. It's tied to your bank account. And it comes at you in the morning and just asks you to press yes or no. And so what it's made us stop and think about is we need to rethink. It isn't even just, how we thought about education has got to change. It isn't you can't do this. We got to help them with it because it's become just so second nature that they didn't even realize what they were doing. And to an athlete, every single one of them totally underestimated what they actually had done once we got the gaming results. And not in a negative way, like they were trying to lie. It'd be like you or I, if somebody asked you how many text messages, how many times have you checked your phone today? And there was a way to electronically know how many times you looked at your phone, I bet we'd all be stunned how many times we looked at our phone versus what we thought we did. And so that's what hit me with this. None of them have done anything where you just go, oh my gosh, that was criminal, that was horrible, they're a bad apple. They just kind of got caught up in something that has become part of society in a way that most of us probably woefully underestimate.
Yeah. Go ahead. Sorry.
And so we've got to learn, we've just got to rethink what education really means.
One of the things that hit me when all this came out was it used to be, I remember like previous gambling scandals. It was because somebody was friends with a bookmaker or, they were here in this spot. And the overwhelming simplicity, like you just said, was the thing that I think that maybe everybody wasn't ready for, that once again, you don't have to go see or talk to or look at another human being. You just have to push a button.
Right. And, the student athletes talked about you're hooked in. Like you get up in the morning and you got notifications. And you've got notifications that says, hey, do you want to put a $5 bet on this? Or do you want to bet on this? Or do you want to bet on that? And they just said it's like you start answering yes and no. It's like you're playing a video game. And all of a sudden, one day, somebody tells you, whoa, over the last 6 months, you did it this many times, and you're blown away.
Jamie, are you going to be on the scheduling committee that has Arizona State playing in Morgantown the first year?
No, but I'm going to make sure I have that weekend off.
We're going to have Wren Baker on. It's good that Arizona State reached out. Glad that happened because there was a thought, and yes, they probably were screaming and clawing to stay because they're loyal, but it's great that everybody, because that's the one thing right now you have, right? With the 12 teams that will be a part of it, not including even the incoming 4, but that everybody is on the same page and understand everybody's important. If there's a life raft, that everybody needs to go with them.
Well, that is true. But, at the same time, you got to have a little fun with this. So I'm sure it'll be sheer coincidence that first football schedule, Arizona State's at West Virginia. I'm sure that'll just be just a total coincidence.
Thank you so much for your time, Jamie. We've always appreciated what you've been able to bring to the table when we've had you on many, many times. Tell Nick Jost thank you as well, and have a great week.
All right. And for the record, I didn't say anything about Texas today, did I?
No, you didn't. No, you didn't.
No, you didn't.
Well, we're not done.
Please tell Chris Del Conte that.
No. Thank you, buddy. Appreciate it. Jamie Pollard, Director of Athletics at Iowa State, with a bunch of great nuggets for us today on this show.
I do think that was one of the most, I don't know, I don't pay as much attention as Paul and the other guys to like the hits and things like that. But I do know that one went pretty viral. The Jamie Pollard, Texas one that went pretty, like millions of hits and whatnot. Thousands and thousands of likes and retweets on that one. So yeah, I love that he threw that in there at the end because that was the last time we talked to him, right? That was several months ago. But yeah, good stuff there. I mean, I just tweeted out on the Big 12 expansion side, it's done for the foreseeable future because there's no TV money left. All of us are leveraged enough without diluting ourselves further. And to be clear, he was speaking about the Big 12 only and, left open like, hey, there could be stuff that happens elsewhere. But, Mac Rhodes kind of said that yesterday as well. I mean, he didn't say it exactly that way, but he pretty much said it that way when I asked him about, basketball only ads or partial shares. And, he didn't rule it out because there's always a chance, as we've seen, that things can change. But it's not likely at all. So that's one aspect, but I'm sure there's other things that you guys picked up on as well that he had to say because there was a lot there.
Yeah, and we got to take a break. But the UConn thing was, that was pretty like if it wasn't going to be them, then UConn had a shot, that's like the best and worst thing UConn fans have probably heard all day. In that, like, it's true, we were going to get there, but
the way it was like, when I first saw that, it just seemed like it was very imminent. Mm-hmm. And to me, there was just way too many questions to go like, Colorado, UConn, boom, we're done. I was just like, that doesn't make any sense. And so, it just seemed like, they were a backup option if things didn't go correctly. And you're right, Paul, that's not a great thing. Like, we were in the running. Yay, I almost won the lottery, but I didn't. And so, that's not really a a fun thing to hear, I don't think, but it's also,
buying 6 tickets and hitting one number on each ticket.
Right, yeah.
Yeah.
But, it's good to hear some clarification there and get some more insight on just kind of how everything was being viewed. So, maybe that bodes well depending on what happens with the ACC, that the Huskies are on that precipice of there's obviously something there that there's some attraction there, the market or just the potential or what have you. Basketball, obviously. So maybe things aren't quite done until they're done for UConn. But as far as the Big 12 goes, it appears that's the case.
We do need to take a break, but I do think that UConn was Brett Yormark's baby, and I still think that's still kind of the glimmer in his eye. And yet what a lot of others in the Big 12 said, hey, hold on. Again, if you go to a vote with this, it may not end up well, and we don't want that. You got this equity. And then on top of that, let's see how things happen with the schools that we still have on our radar. Good stuff. Jamie Pollard, again, thanks to Nick Jose very much for being a part of what he helps with the show, has with us for a long, long time. When we come back at 4 o'clock, Billy Embody, he covers both SMU and LSU for On 3. His thoughts about SMU and where is this? How legitimate is it? How warm or hot or cold is it when it comes to their future and possibly a Power 5? And this is 365 Sports. Waco Custom Marketplace, 425 Lake Air Drive in Waco. The Brian Bauer and family, they've done such a great job. There was Waco Meats, and there is still Waco Meats. It's a distribution business where they send out product to restaurants throughout, not just Central Texas, but around the state of Texas. I mentioned one time I was driving into Dallas, and to my right I saw this delivery truck, and it was Waco Custom Meats delivering to a restaurant or more up in the Dallas and Fort Worth area. And then on top of that, there's a local butcher shop and bakery along with what you need with the main knickknacks that you would have in a grocery store. And today and throughout this week and through Saturday, top sirloin steak at $6.99 a pound. Boneless pork chops are $2 a pound. 15% off all Boar's Head lunch meat. Regular snacks and jalapeno cheese snacks are $5.50 and $6.50 a pound, and chicken leg quarters are just 70 cents a pound. They have what you need when it comes to seasonings, marinades, charcoal, pellet fuel. What you need, they have it. It's Waco Custom Marketplace at 425 Lake Air Drive in Waco.
During the Make This the Summer event, save big on a 2023 Jeep Grand Cherokee Limited with $3,500 plus 2.9% for 72 months. Or a 2023 Jeep Gladiator Sport with employee pricing for all plus 1.9% for 72 months. And an extra $1,000 rebate. Or if that's not enough, get a 2023 Jeep Compass 10% off MSRP. That's right, and no payments for 90 days on all offers. Find the Jeep that fits you at Allen Samuels in Waco.
The future's bright, the time is now.
College is what you make it. It's a late night pizza run and all-nighters coding a new project. It's having big dreams and making them a reality. It's a professor who knows your name and your story. It's preparation for your future, your calling, your life. And at Baylor, it's even more. Baylor, where lights shine bright.
One size fits all. That may be all right for an adjustable belt or cheap sunglasses, but when it comes to your financial needs, no one wants a one-size-fits-all strategy. Ben Erlinson, your Edward Jones financial advisor, knows that his most important goals are yours. That's why he takes the time to understand your needs, knowing you. That's how Edward Jones makes sense of investing. Ben Erlinson, 100 North 6th Street in Waco, 254-759-8533. Edward Jones, member SIPC.
Baylor Scott & White Southwest Sports Medicine and Orthopedics, the team physicians for Baylor Athletics, diagnosing and treating all sports-related injuries, including concussions. These specialists also provide orthopedic services for athletes and non-athletes alike, whether it's knee or shoulder pain, a wrist injury, orthopedic spine care, and even an arthritis and total joint clinic. Trust the doctors Baylor Athletics trust. Baylor Scott & White Southwest Sports Medicine and Orthopedics wants to get you back in the game.
TFNB Your Bank for Life is the official local bank of Baylor Athletics. Find out why more Central Texas are making TFNB their bank for life. Sign up for our Edge checking and savings accounts to earn interest or cash back. With 5 convenient locations and an award-winning mobile app, banking has never been easier. TFNB, your bank for life. Member FDIC.
Pioneer Steel and Pipe opened their doors in 1943, and they have never wavered with their focus on great product and customer service, relationships with a handshake, making sure you, the customer, is satisfied. Their new facility is now twice the size, allowing new inventory, higher quantities, and in a much more organized fashion. In addition to the long lengths in tubing, angles, channels, rods, and flat, Pioneer Steel and Pipe now offers several shorter, more convenient lengths of material already cut. Their 2,500 square foot showroom has over 1,000 new products in stock, new welding supplies, hardware, quickcrete, and do-it-yourself components for any project, whether you are a professional contractor or weekend warrior. The new facility is designed to make your loading experience faster and more efficient with easy drive lanes around the building and much more room to get your trailer loaded. Our location may have changed, but our values haven't, and our relationship with customers goes much farther than just business. Pioneer Steel and Pipe on Loop 340 and Highway 6 and just east of I-35 in Waco.
Parenting is full of surprises.
You never know what to expect.
So after our son was born, I called my Texas Farm Bureau insurance agent to set up a life insurance policy in case something happened to me.
Sawyer is now 2.
And we'll soon have a sister. There's no one else I would trust with protecting my family.
Stop by and see our agents at one of our 3 McLennan County locations.
Coverage and discounts are subject to qualifications and policy terms and may vary by situation.
This is 365 Sports.
The 3 o'clock hour is sponsored by Waco Custom Marketplace. Meats, sweets, Texas treats, and a cut above the rest. 425 Lake Air Drive, Waco.
Just around the corner, we'll hear from Billy Embud. He covers both SMU and LSU in Texas in that race for Colin Simmons, the elite defensive lineman from Duncanville. In fact, I just saw where Caden Durham from Duncanville, of course, is trying to make his decision on where he plays his college football. We saw him when they splattered Midway a couple years in a row. So here's another super chat from Chris, and we've been able to get to, I believe, all of them. And this one from, where did it go? Here we go. This one from Chris. Guys, the Pac-4 should invite Hawaii, San Diego State, UNLV, Fresno State, Boise State, and SMU. That gets them to 10 and keeps them at least competitive at 10.
Okay, they can't pay all those exit fees right away, and they have to get them by next year to keep their A5 status. So it's not really possible. Plus, Hawaii doesn't have a stadium right now. It's been condemned. They're playing on their on-campus practice facility, so that makes it hard for them to do it. Plus, the travel, it's 5 hours from Los Angeles to get to Hawaii. That's why they're kind of in this weird spot anyway. It sucks for them, but that's the nature of it, and they love football out there. But, yeah, that while that's like an idea, it's just not feasible for right now. That's why the problem remains of you couldn't just go and add Mountain West schools. The San Diego State situation shows you why they can't, because they'd have to get them all to pay $34 million right away. The Mountain West is not going to negotiate that down for an immediate collapse of their own conference right now. This wouldn't be a one-school thing. This isn't now San Diego State leaving. This would then be going to the Mountain West and going, we'll take everyone who wants to come here. Well, then the Mountain West, the teams that are remaining, are like, okay, you all owe us $34 million, and most of them don't have that kind of cash on hand and don't want to pay it out over the years. So they have to wait till it went down to 17, which is 2025, which doesn't do the Pac-12 or the Pac-4 any favors, because they need to be at least to 6 to be a real conference by the start of 2024.
Very well said, Paul. And so that's nice to just add a bunch of people, but there are issues. I mean, again, San Diego State, remember, thought they were going to be a part of the Pac-12. They were going to wanted to get out early, pay $17 million. Eventually, that fell apart. $34 million is the cost. It is, and if it's for them, it's for a lot of other people. Black and Gold Banneret asking me on Twitter. So to recap, the shares of the 4 teams that are joining the conference this year. 2023-24, around $18 million. 24-25 for those 4 schools. Again, UCF, BYU, Houston, and Cincinnati is probably around $19 million something. And then 25 and 26, The 31.7 that is a full share now, that's the average, remember, and so it's probably going to be somewhere in that neighborhood, give or take $1 million, but it would be what everyone else in the conference is getting, and we'll get next year. They'll get it in 25 and 26. Coming up next, Billy Embody covers SMU. He's next. This is 365 Sports. Ideal MRI, Dr. Rob Maxey, what an idea in what they do. They're in the Central Texas Marketplace in Waco. They have an MRI machine that I have experienced and Texan specialists that make that experience a lot easier for someone like me who can get a little jittery when it comes to close spaces. I just don't like it. But they have been amazing. I've been to a couple of other MRI machines before, and it just felt like they were like a car wash. Not with them. They are great from the time you get the appointment set up to the time where your doctor wants the information, the images, and it's in the portal. You know, using a college football term, it's in the portal for the patient, you, and for your doctor, what they need to see. Shoulder, back, leg. Mine I also had from an abdomen to just kind of make sure everything was okay when it comes to prostate cancer. Not that I have it, but because it's been in the family. Rob Maxey and company will also guarantee that you'll never pay more than $497. The average is $1,100. You can do the math. That's a heck of a savings. You get the images you need. You'll find out why something hurt you, and maybe it's not that it's hurting you. It's just something else. You can have some sort of other rehab, but you're going to get the information. The evidence, film don't lie, and $497 every time or less at Ideal MRI in Waco.
Pizza, burgers, and Bears football. There's no place around Waco that serves them all other than Bubba's 33. Come show your green and gold and enjoy some of Waco's best food and beverages while watching your favorite team, the Bears. When real Bears fans get hungry, Bubba's 33 is the #1 spot for ice-cold drinks, hand-stretched, stone-baked pizzas, and bacon-infused burgers. Join us for indoor or patio dining. Bubba's 33, Waco's restaurant and proud supporter of Baylor Bears football. Sick 'em, Bears.
Riverbend Liquor and Wine now has 2 locations to serve you. The original on Lakeshore Drive at North 19th Street and the brand new spot in downtown Waco at 600 Franklin Avenue. If you're looking for the best in craft beers or local Texas bourbons, then the original is the place to be. And for the latest trends and online phenomenons, head downtown to the Franklin location. Either way, you're going to get the same great variety, customer service, and speedy experience. Check out both locations on their Facebook and Instagram pages. And if you can't make it to Riverbend, DoorDash is available to bring it to you. Riverbend Liquor and Wine, Lakeshore Drive at North 19th Street, and now downtown on Franklin Avenue.
Do you or your kids get nervous about going to the dentist? Stonewood Dental, Dr. Steve Childress, he can help.
I've spent a career taking care of patients who as children had bad experiences, and now they're adults that hate going to the dentist. If I get a kid at 3 years old and they come every 6 months and it's a happy experience, it's normal for them. Now they have an accident at 6 or 7 or 8 at school. Now they have a broken tooth or a trauma, and they have to come here. They're used to lights, they're used to water in their mouth, they're used to experience, they already trust us. It's amazing what we can do with that kid without it being a negative thing. But if I see a 6 or 7 or 8 year old that's never been to the dentist, and now they have a trauma or an unfortunate unexpected toothache, it's harder to do that for that kid and it not be somewhat of a negative experience. So bottom line is I try to teach kids and adults and teenagers and everybody the way I'd want my family treated, which is where it's a necessary part of life. You just take care of it. It doesn't have to be that big a deal.
Learn more, stonewood-dental.com.
Let Camille Johnson Realtors guide you seamlessly through the process of buying your dream home or selling your current one. Commercial, farm and ranch, or residential, Camille Johnson Realtors can smoothly and successfully lead you through any transaction. With a team of 28 experienced agents who are excited about serving you, Camille Johnson Realtors services the entire greater Waco area. If you're in the market to buy or sell, contact Camille Johnson Realtors, 104 Midway Center in Woodway, or find them online at www.camillejohnson.com. Camille Johnson Realtors, elegant, charming, warm. Welcome home.
Stepping into a new pair of boots is great, but stepping into the boots of a U.S. Army officer can also add confidence and leadership skills to your son or daughter's career path. There are more than 150 occupational specialties to help them find the best fit for their future. See all the things your son or daughter can achieve in our boots at GoArmy.com. U.S. Army Waco Recruiting Company, 254-598-8131 or 254-776-1543.
This is 365 Sports, powered by Sikkim365.com. Enjoying the show? Hit the like button and subscribe.
So earlier today, I reached out to Billy Embody. I think he will get a kick out of this as well. And I said to him, so how much of this SMU and the possibility of whatever it might be, remember for a while it was the Pac-12, and then all of a sudden it flares up, it could be the ACC. And Billy basically said I think every breath of every day. And he joins us with Paul Catalina. I'm David Smoak. Craig Smoak just went to Baylor football practice on 365 Sports. Has it really been like that? And I mean, it's like, it's good that it's there, but how much are you spending time on this?
Yeah, this has dominated the SMU message boards for a year now. Whether it be the Pac-12, any glimmer of hope from the Big 12, or even the ACC to a lesser degree, because the ACC has moved in relative silence. But when I tell you, you can have a recruiting commitment, you can have spring practice, spring game, whatever. People are wondering, well, did you hear anything new on realignment? What's the latest out there? Is there any chance? What's the buzz? It's been nonstop. I got to commend some of our members at ontheponyexpress.com. They keep that realignment thread buzzing every day.
Billy, so what we've heard is they're willing to not take a media share for a few years to get in. One is that really the case, or what kind of share would they be getting? And what do they feel their realistic chances are to get in? Because they might be the last of the group of five that has a real shot at this for the foreseeable future.
Yeah, so I was skeptical when I saw the reports about no share coming SMU's way. I just thought, really, are they going to go completely zero and just kind of try to give it all up? But I've gotten it confirmed through a couple sources that is indeed the case for roughly 5 years at this point. And who knows? They're going back and forth. Their presidents are in discussion with the ACC. They're not in yet. Maybe there's another round of negotiating, so to speak, and we'll see how that ends up looking on the back end of things if it does happen. But right now, SMU is willing to give up 5 years of revenue from the conference, from the television deal, to get in a piece of that, of course. And what that would mean is that those conference schools would get that portion divided up, and they would be given that instead of it going to SMU, which would create roughly about $3 to $4 million a year in new money for these schools, depending on how well the ACC network and some of these other financial implications go when it comes to their TV deal as things progress over the years. So as ESPN looks back through the books and see how things went, that share and that money would be divided up. So that means SMU would be foregoing that money. Obviously, a full share member is around, I think, $30-something million, a little bit more than that in the ACC. And the big thing with them right now is trying to hold off Florida State and Clemson, trying to whet their appetite to stay longer, or at least kick the can down the road a little bit. And if you add SMU, you add Cal and Stanford. It hasn't been something that has been floated as SMU or Cal or Stanford. It seems like if SMU gets added, it's going to be with Cal and Stanford. There's a potential that only Cal and Stanford get added. But the most buzz I've heard has at least been around those three schools as a whole being talked about being added, because SMU would bridge the central time zone to the West Coast. And Cal and Stanford would take around 50%, which would give the schools roughly $6 to $8 million, again, kind of depending on how the numbers work out, in new money per year. So that's a large portion of the pitch from SMU and these schools. Now, on the flip side for SMU, could this happen? It very well could. This is something that SMU has been working on for well over a year. Everybody talks about the Big 12 because of a lot of the regional rivalries in the past and things like that. The Pac-12 was very public in terms of how everything was going down, but SMU continued to work avenues with the ACC. And even kind of dating back to May, I heard from a couple of people that felt like, hey, this isn't a situation where SMU's been told no, they've been told go away. They haven't certainly been told, hey, this is looking good, you're going to be in, like the Pac-12 has kind of given some indications. But they said, let's keep talking. Let's keep our options open. Because there's a lot of kind of similarities in terms of mindset that SMU has that some of the ACC schools have. And so SMU kept doing that. Their leadership kept on them, their consultants, their board of trustees chair, David Miller, has been very involved. And it's something that they've just continued to go through. And so I think as the wake-up call happened with the Pac-12, where, look, these schools are not going to be honest with you most of the time. They're going to look out for themselves. I think the ACC is motivated because they don't want to look up in however long and see that Florida State, Clemson have left. Now they're down to 10 plus Notre Dame, so kind of 11 or however you want to count Notre Dame. And then UNC and NC State say, well, okay, we've got to do something now to get out ahead of this because we're going to be left behind too. So adding Cal, Stanford, and SMU would solidify the ACC from a numbers perspective that you could weather that storm and keep yourself in the discussion as one of the top conferences.
Billy, SMU has money. We know that, and sometimes people take that for granted, but we know that they have an incredible alumni and donor base. They have been waiting for this opportunity. Now, they were kind of toyed with, I guess, because of the Pac-12, and that did not work out. Are they willing, or I know the answer, but I'm going to ask you because you're the one that covers it. Are they willing to have others who would write checks to offset anything else they would need to make sure this happened?
Yeah, so I was talking with a couple people, and look, what they're giving up basically would be the $7 million. And quite frankly, and you mentioned it, SMU has that type of money where that's not viewed as a roadblock.
Mm-hmm.
The $7 million that they currently get from the AAC, if it disappeared tomorrow and the league folded, there would be people that would step up and say, okay, we got this, we'll fill in this, we'll fill in that. It might take a second, but this is something SMU has been planning for. Taking a reduced share, taking a hefty discount, and now I think they know that with the ACC, they would have to give it up to get in. And there's a group that I think and have been told are highly motivated. There are people at the top like David Miller and others that have been, this has been their life for the last year, trying to get SMU into the Power 5 ranks, or now Power 4 ranks, I guess. And they're ready to foot the bill. They're ready to write it off and say, yes, we asked for this. We want our program to be in this club, which is, ever evolving, but we want our program to be in this club, give ourselves the best chance to move forward at a high level of collegiate athletics. And to do that, we got to all foot the bill. So let's divide it up. Let's make this happen, and we can be in the ACC. That's been their message, and I've been told that the $7 million, and let's just call it change for, assuming that they'll kick in some more money year to year to show that they're even more committed to the ACC and doing it at Power 5 level, which they have been, which, $200+ million in facilities the last couple of years going up. They are all in, and they will foot that delta of media money with no questions asked.
So, Billy, they've been preparing for this. Do you think that they could make a pretty seamless transition into competing in the league?
I think so. And what I mean by that, though, is one, you've got to see SMU this year kick the door down and be in the conference championship game for the AAC. You've got to see them win 10 games. You would really like to see them win the league. We know what SMU's done with NIL and their two collectives, which are, among the top ones just nationally. They've dumped about $4 million a year into it, which is really impressive. But you've got to kick the door down and become a winner. 1 10-win season and however many years it's been. This year, if they can steal one or two of the OU TCU out of conference games that they have, plus appear in the conference championship or win it, that is okay, They've shown they can get to that next level. They've vanquished some of the past in terms of not being able to win some of the big games. Now you feel a little bit better in terms of where the program is really headed long-term for Power 5 conference, which once you get in, you can recruit better. You don't have to maybe NIL as much to beat out a Power 5 school to get a kid to come, or however it all works out. These are all now factors that work in your favor. Then you can build a little bit better depth. You can build a little bit better talent. You can pay your coaches more. You can do whatever at a higher level because you're in a Power 4, Power 5, whatever it is now. And that makes the transition a little bit better. So SMU has a team to win a conference championship this year. They absolutely need to do that or be in that game come December. And that would show a really good sign that things can be headed in the right direction long term. And then as you get into the ACC, you can continue to stockpile a little bit more talent and be ready to compete. I don't think this is a league that SMU would walk into and be at the bottom of the conference. I think there are some schools that are doing a pretty good job in the ACC of kind of owning that cellar right now. And if SMU can have another strong transfer class going into the 2024 season, and let's just say it all works out and they somehow get into the ACC, they're probably not a favorite by any means, but they're middle of the road, right where they kind of should be entering the league.
Would this be for 2024? Not obviously not this year. Would it be for 2024 when all the other realignment changes take effect?
So they are pushing for 2024, and that's another factor in this one too, where SMU's donors are willing to pay that exit fee for the AAC to get in 2024, which would probably be negotiated to about $10 million or so, or 15, kind of in that range. And they're ready to write that check. They were ready to write it for the Pac-12, and they want to get into the club as soon as possible. They know that even waiting a year could scuttle that if things can happen between now and 2025.
All right, Billy, we appreciate it. There's a note. I'm going to put the tweet up. Can we do that at the same time, Garrett, when we have Billy on? I'll let you know. I saw Larry Williams covers Clemson for Tigers Illustrated. He put out a report that Notre Dame is pushing hard for the Cal-Stanford edition because they are a voting member of the ACC. Do you feel like that one's a lock, or do you feel like that one's, like, let's say 1, and then SMU would be possibly 2?
I think it'd be really wise for the ACC to add Cal and Stanford just because they're already in the club. You know what you're getting for the most part with those two programs. But I'll say this. The stability is with the numbers. And in terms of trying to dig around on, well, is it Cal and Stanford or SMU, or is it Cal, Stanford, and SMU? I tend to dig around away from SMU on that. And from what I've gathered, it seems like there's more momentum to add all 3 versus just add 2. So I think when sometimes people kind of talk about it, you're going to talk about the 2 Power 5 teams or current Power 5 or whatever they are, I guess, at this point, teams that are in the mix. But if you're going to add Cal, outside of them being right down the road from Stanford, that is a athletic department that's a complete mess. Mm-hmm. They have no money. They have debt. They haven't been committed to winning at a high level. I mean, I don't think Sonny Dykes would crush them publicly, but I'm sure you could ask him about it, and he'd give you a read between the lines answer on it. It's just not a good place to be right now. And that is why I feel, and I've gotten the sense from a couple sources, that if they add 2, they're going to add 3. And SMU is the team that's committed and gives them Texas out of those 3. So, I mean, if you kind of did a power rankings, it would almost be Stanford, SMU edging out Cal.
Is there anybody that's in the ACC right now that SMU needs to suck up to pretty quickly?
Well, I think it's interesting because Florida State and Clemson are trying to get out. We know that. But in the interim, before they figure that out, this deal would give them a nice little chunk of change. I know it's not much, but it would help. It would be $6 to $7 million. I think those 2 schools are key because they are power figures. Everybody's trying to listen to them. North Carolina, I've heard, interestingly enough, is one that SMU needs to kind of get in good graces with a little bit more. But, Mac Brown interviewed for the SMU job all those years ago. I'm surprised he hasn't said it'd be a good ad for the league. So, those are kind of the initial ones that I feel like they've got to get in good with, is the true power brokers of this league.
Billy, good stuff, man. Thank you so much. Appreciate your time from On3.com. Billy Unbuddy covers SMU and also LSU, and we appreciate that. We have some super chats to get to here before we take our next break.
Yeah, I would worry if I'm SMU and Cal and Stanford that – and Cal and Stanford probably know this more than SMU does. Cal and Stanford's conference could have expanded before all this happened, and two schools that were leaving it voted against it, USC and UCLA. So I'm sure Cal and Stanford are probably going, you guys are going to vote for this, right? Like, everybody's going to vote for this. Because if they have enough voting against it. Now, look, Florida State could have made their own bed in that maybe they're not as powerful if they say, no, we don't want them. We're like, well, if you guys want to leave anyway, then double birds to you. You're just going to take this extra money we're going to give you and be happy with it for a little bit until you figure out a way out. I don't know. This is such a bizarre situation with the ACC in that they're at this point where they're like, all right, well, because look, geographically, SMU makes more sense, and SMU makes more sense to the ACC in doing what the Big 12 did in moving outside of your comfort zone and adding a school in a major market. Look, it's not the same because SMU is a much smaller school than UCF. Most schools are smaller than UCF. But if you say, okay, well, if the Big 12 is going into Florida, then we better go into Texas. Let's fight fire with fire here and see what happens. And then the other ones are just like, well, we might as well add because we can get numbers. There's Stanford and Cal, and all the schools can have this big research grant and all that stuff. Fine, but at the end of it, it's so strange to try to make it all work.
It's amazing is that we saw for months and months and months, 13 months, what was going to happen to the Pac-12. Finally, you get Colorado, and of course, all of them could have said, no, we're staying. And you had the drama Friday with Arizona State, and then also Utah. So that story kind of like now is set, right? And Florida State raised their leg up last week or tried to pound their chest. And here now it's about the ACC and what they're going to do because Stanford and Cal are available or SMU's trying to find their way in. And then even then, it may not be over. So here's some super chats. First of all, Kyle A., $5, thank you, are starting a Utah helmet fund to put behind you. Thank you. We'll put it up there. If it's there, we'll put it up there. We'll probably have the BYU and Utah helmets facing each other like we've done with some of the other rivalries.
All the time. They'll never be apart.
No. Blake, thank you. How likely do you think SMU ends up in the ACC by 2024? If they're at it, it will be 2024. And Blake, I asked the question because of your super chat. Thank you for that.
I actually think right now it's 50-50 on the ACC adding anybody. And so I'll just say 50-50. I think that the SMU will come for free for 5 years to show you we're going to be good, happy members, and then that gets you through. I've often wondered about the ACC. Why don't you, if enough of you have a problem with the grant of rights and there's nowhere else for everybody to go, why don't you just renegotiate the grant of rights? Like get together and go, okay, let's renegotiate this and like make it a little bit more palatable for everybody so that we're not all stuck the next time it comes around.
Why would ESPN allow that?
Well, I mean, if you have your other partner wants to say like, hey, can we come to the table? Like try, if they're all willing to do it, if they're not all willing to do it, then not. But
yeah. And the grant of rights is between, remember, the members in the conference.
Yeah.
And the conference's relationship is with the network.
Yeah. So, I mean, again, the ACC's TV rights would still live with ESPN, but it would allow teams that maybe wanted
is it like renegotiate or like refinancing your house?
Yeah. Like if there's a way to do it, I don't know. This is all very strange. But
all right. From Keston Walker, I hope I said that right. Walther, thank you for your incredible content. Thank you. Currently in Germany. I look forward to listening to your podcast on a daily basis. Please note I am wholeheartedly opposed to any exclusionary Jim Crow law-based CFP invitational.
Well, is that maybe like what Greg Sankey kind of alluded to, and then changing all of that? Yeah, I think that they need to make it a completely inclusionary when it comes to everybody. I mean, that's the problem we had before. And, sometimes how much better, think about how much better your life is at work, even though sometimes you don't need to do something. If you do something, it shuts everybody up about it. Like, we're doing it. It's not a big deal. Hasn't changed much for us. But if you let everybody have an opportunity at the playoff, then they can't complain about it anymore, and you don't have to constantly answer questions about it anymore. So nobody's really being hurt because the power conferences are still going to have most of the teams in. And look, if there's a Tulane in there that's better than the fourth or fifth best team in the SEC, and that team doesn't get in, well, guess what? Fourth or fifth best team, get better.
Ohio State will be looking for a new athletic director. Gene Smith will retire a year from now, or a little bit less than a year from now, in July of 2024. That's a big boy job right there. Gene Smith moving on. And also Ohio State starts to look for an AD. USC, of course, has been in their early stages, perhaps even deeper than that, when it comes to their replacing their AD. The Mountain West released a statement. Conferences do this. We saw way too many from the Pac-12 without anything really coming out of it. Monday night, admitting that the board of directors, 12 presidents, met to reaffirm the collective commitment to the conference and its future. The recent changes in membership composition in several conferences, the Mountain West, exploring all opportunities to strengthen the league, including the addition of new member schools. Chairperson Garnett Stokes of New Mexico, Gloria Nevarez, the commissioner, will be the voice of the conference as they lead ongoing exploration. So there's a statement. The Pac-12 put out more statements, and it got to the point, I think Andy Staples put out the ones that they put out with the dates on them, and in the end, it didn't work well. We'll see what Mountain West Conference will do. When we come back, he's the director of athletics at West Virginia, Wren Baker. His thoughts about all of what we've seen with the Big 12, his thoughts about giving schools who are going to be moving from one timeline to another or crossing into two, about how West Virginia has handled it, even though he's been there just for a short amount of time. And also, do they feel isolated? Do they like the idea of somebody in their time zone besides UCF or Cincinnati near them? The possibility is that on the table, at least in their opinion, their ideas. And yes, Arizona State with a shot across the bow today. They apologized, and Ray Anderson spoke to Wren. We'll discuss that. This is 365 Sports. PettyClinicalOT.com. Dr. Kent Petty and his staff can help you become the high-performance man you want to be, need to be, and probably used to be. As you get older, not everybody, 1 out of about 3 or 4 men have symptomatic issues of low testosterone. The one that gets all of the attention, it seems like, is ED, sex drive not the same, something's missing, and it happens. And it's something that I would think, 10 or 15 years ago, man, you didn't discuss it. It was embarrassing. It happens. You look at all the commercials now about that, and Petty Clinical OT can help you with that if you're suffering from any kind of issues, including focus, energy, and more, even your sleep habits, but also, as I mentioned, what it's like for you when it comes to your sex drive. Dr. Petty, this is what they'll do. Go to PettyClinicalOT.com, look for the email and phone number, contact them. They will then set up for you to get blood, give blood, get the results. He will pay for that. And if your testosterone levels are too low, he can then offer you an option of helping you get your testosterone levels where they need to be. It's Dr. Kent Petty, PettyClinicalOT.com.
Cars priced right, both day and night. Average your car in Texas. Trucks built for you, red, white, and blue. Average your car in Texas. Cars that zoom with lots of room. Average your car in Texas. Count on us, a dealer to trust. Average your car in Waco, Texas.
Established in 2007 and independently owned, Alliance Bank Central Texas is committed to helping families and businesses meet their financial goals. From their tellers to their board of directors, they know the importance of superior service and competitive products. Customers have confidence knowing that their financial needs are in good hands. It's your bank, Alliance Bank Central Texas, with 2 Waco locations, 4721 Bosque Boulevard and 191 Archway Drive on Highway 84, and at AllianceBankTexas.com. Member FDIC and equal housing lender.
Where is the best beef in Texas? Your house. When you order from Texas Beef House, unleash the flavor of Texas-raised Wagyu from our pasture to your plate at TexasBeefHouse.com. Samantha Duvall joins us. She's the marketing director who knows all of the specials and also the events coming up. And thank you very much, as always, for your time. So all of these holidays are over. We've hit the meat of, literally, of the summer. And your thoughts about as you hit the month of August and into football season, Samantha?
Football season's right around the corner, so that means it's perfect time for tailgating. The best time to grab our hamburger patties is right now through the end of July. We still have our sale going on with our regular patties and our jalapeno and cheese patties. They're $12 a package, so that's 4 patties to a package. It's perfect for the time for football. Gather all your family around. That way you can grill it up.
Where's the best beef in Texas? Your house. When you order from Texas Beef House, unleash the flavor of Texas-raised Wagyu and how they age it as well. From our pasture to your plate, TexasBeefHouse.com.
Shorty's Pizza Shack at 12th and Bagby is a homegrown, locally owned pizza place that's out of this world. Everything from the dough, the sauce, the sausage topping is made fresh in-house. Not to mention the amazing pizza pillows, the chicken wings are to die for. Try the Sikkim sauce, chili cheese fries or tots, plus great specials on food and drink every single day. Shorty's is also the perfect spot to watch the game with your friends. Shorty's Pizza Shack at 12th and Bagby. Tell them Paul sent you by.
Did you know that 1 out of every 4 men have symptomatic low levels of testosterone and don't even know it? And if you think you're too young to worry about it, guess again. Low T levels can make you feel tired and grumpy, raise your cholesterol, and cause weight gain. Petty Clinic Low T can set up same-day blood screening and results. So if you're tired of being tired, call or go online at pettycliniclowt.com. It's a private clinic with an atmosphere catering to men. Affordable, only $165 a month, including lab work, office consultation, testosterone injections, and follow-up visits, compared to $300 or more a month in Dallas or Austin, and you don't have to drive 90 miles one way or the other and fight the traffic. Petty Clinic Low T has board-certified physician consultations and will provide the best form of brand-strength testosterone. Contact Petty Clinic Low T for increased energy, improvement in sexual desire and performance, mood, concentration, even a decrease in body and belly fat. Just off Highway 84 and Old Hewitt Drive in Woodway, pettycliniclowt.com.
This is 365 Sports, powered by Sikkim365.com.
The 4 o'clock hour is sponsored by Boozer's Jewelers, the wedding ring store, specializing in custom jewelry and repair, all in-house.
Now here's David Smoak, Paul Catalina, and Craig Smoak.
Craig went to Baylor football practice. He'll be back here sometime in the next probably half an hour. We're now joined by West Virginia Director of Athletics and a great friend of the show in Wren Baker. Paul Catalina with me, David Smoak. Well, how you doing, Wren?
I'm doing great, guys. It's beautiful here in West Virginia, and so last week, and you all appreciate this, and as somebody who grew up in Oklahoma and spent the last 6+ years in Texas and have followed your weather these last few weeks, we had a heat advisory last week, and I looked at my phone to see what the temperature was going to be, and the high was expected to be 89. So that tells you about summers in West Virginia. It's going great. Our team is working and looking good. All of our fall sports teams have started practice, and so we're just excited to get the school year underway.
With the 89-degree temperature, that was a shot across our bow, and now I am in the Ray Anderson. No,
actually, I'm the exact opposite. I will absolutely come to Morgantown.
Yeah, absolutely.
I've been thinking about it more since you said that. Like, it just, man.
80, and I bet Greenbrier is probably just gorgeous. Oh, good Lord.
Well, and here we consistently get a lot of rain, so things just stay so green throughout the year. And this is my first summer to spend here, and so we haven't been here. But and Heather and I certainly love Texas and Oklahoma, and that's where all of our family is. But we've been so pleasantly surprised with how wonderful the summers are here, and there's just so much to see and do outdoors, whether it's hiking or kayaking or river floats, whatever it is you want to do. And so it is a great place to visit. Now, you draw those later games in the schedule. Once it turns cold, it's probably not as enjoyable for some of the visiting teams. But if you get those early September and early October games, it's a beautiful place to visit.
So, Wren, just to get it out of the way, I mean, Ray Anderson made the comment that he made. You guys have talked. Everybody's made up now. They're members of the conference moving forward. But how do you – I mean, because these things do pop up from time to time in college sports. Like, how did you deal with it, and how do you – how did you get to the point where you guys kind of move past it?
I never, I didn't get real upset by it. We do enough of these interviews, and probably all of us have had a comment here or there. Sometimes we're trying to be funny or say something in jest, and it doesn't land quite like you would think it would. So I didn't, I wasn't ever angry about it necessarily. But if you come to West Virginia, one thing that people will learn about West Virginians is they love this place very dearly, and they want other people to give it a chance. And so when someone says something like that, and I shared this with Ray, I said probably of any fan base, ours would probably take that most personal, because it is a place that's very endeared to the hearts of West Virginians, and they don't feel like there's probably as much appreciation from others outside the state as what maybe there should be. And so I made the tweet that I did, which I think most people read it to be aimed at that comment, and in full transparency, it was. But I do tweet a lot about, in my time here, West Virginia, and just the beauty of it. I had not spent much time here, and I've been blown away at just how gorgeous every corner of this state is as I've gotten out to meet people. And so, my tweet was really more aimed at showing some affirmation for our fan base of just how special that this place is for everybody who gives it a chance. And so I got a great call from Ray on Monday. We know each other a little bit. We've met and talked some over the years. One of Arizona State's best donors is a good friend of mine, lives about a mile from me there in Argyle. And so he was very kind and gracious and apologized and even told me that the person that he got in the most trouble from over that was his wife, that she got on him a little bit. So I told him I'm used to a wife that's applying discipline. That happens a lot at the Baker house as well. So we had a great visit, and I told him, I said, hey, he said, I'm sure when I come there I'll get a hard time. I said, that's the thing about West Virginians, man. They're going to want to show you so much how great it is here that you probably need to start thinking now about how you're going to get all your pepperoni rolls, because you're going to get a bunch of them delivered to you. So, and that's the way that the people here are. They're some of the best people you'll ever find anywhere. So it's behind us. We're excited to have Arizona State. We're excited for the future of the Big 12. Both Mac and I throughout the process were very, very much in support of both Arizona schools, and we both, Mac being from there, being an alum of Arizona, we just felt like that would be a great addition to the league. And so I'm very excited, despite the geographic challenges it could present for West Virginia. I'm very excited about what that means for the Big 12.
So I want to get to that, because that was one of my questions about you suggesting or giving recommendations to others and vice versa about the travel. So has Brett Yormark or anyone from the Big 12 told you when that game at home against Arizona State's going to be in 2024?
Well, I think poetic justice would be that it's the first one right off the bat.
Absolutely,
yeah. And I know President Gee would love to host President Crow and all the folks at Arizona State as well. I think he was already sent out a letter offering his hospitality. So, we'll let the conference schedules fall like they fall, but we love to show this place off, and we would love to show it off to the fans there at Arizona State and as well as Colorado, Arizona, and Utah. So we're excited to be able to extend our brand and reach, and we're also excited for our fans to get a chance to learn those other programs and get a chance to maybe see a part of the world they haven't seen before. I don't know how many of our fans make it to Utah, but Utah is also a very beautiful state. I've had a chance to go there several times over the years, and that'll be, even though it's a far trip, it'll be some great trips as we develop those rivalries.
You obviously not having been there long, but the team's been in the conference where they've had to go across a time zone every time that they've played a road game, essentially for a decade now plus. What is the research or the results tell you on how your student athletes' overall quality of life is doing that when it comes to managing being a student athlete and certain games like sports that might play 2 games a week that might have to be on the road twice and do all that? What have you seen at West Virginia of how to deal with that? Because the further west schools are going to have to deal with that in a bigger way too.
Yeah, it's definitely tough, and any coach will tell you, whether it's for a conference or non-conference game, behind the scenes coaches hate crossing those time zones. It just messes with you. And so for us, I mean, we come there and let's say we play a 7:00 Central tip for basketball. That's 8 Eastern, and so we're going to be rolling in, by. It'll be 4 or 5 in the morning for a basketball game coming in like that. I mean, many times by the time I get rolled into my driveway, it was close to 4, if not a little after. And so, that you do that over and over again, it becomes tougher. Now, football, you're talking about 6 road games or 6, 9, potentially road games, sometimes 5 a year, and so it becomes a little more manageable, but it does really mess up your Sunday, and different coaches handle Sunday a little differently, and so it's interesting if you look at just about every sport we have that our win percentage. And home court, home field advantage is big for everybody, but it's more pronounced here at WVU. If you look at, for instance, our basketball team's road record the last few years versus our home record, it's drastically different. So it's difficult for teams to come here, and I remind our coaches of that. I said, listen, it's difficult for us when we go on the road, but it's difficult for teams when they have to come here as well. So we got to use that as an advantage. And then we try in the sports that we can to charter when we can, and charter comfortably, give the kids some room to stretch out. We try to always make sure we have Wi-Fi where they can use some of that time working on their studies. You try and take it a disadvantage and neutralize it as much as you can. The conference has also been good for us, especially in some of the Olympic sports, to try to adjust the schedules. Baseball, for instance, they start us out later than everybody else. Now, how that'll all work with the new conference, membership, we'll see. But I'll say this: the Big 12 leadership's tried to be very accommodating and understanding, and with having Cincinnati and UCF, that doesn't make things over here perfect, but at least it gives us some trips that are in our time zone.
Wren, is it also, if you look at it, it's all driven by money or TV money, and football is mainly the reason. Are you, as a college athletics professional, losing sight of some of what is athletics in a way because of the expansion or realignment?
Well, I definitely think that it's changed the dynamic of the way that conferences are in rivalries for sure. And listen, if we were to blow this thing up and start from scratch today, there's no way we would design it the way that it is. First of all, I think we would just affiliate football only and then bring everything else into conferences. And I'm not so sure we wouldn't say, hey, this would make a lot more sense to go into almost like states do their high school playoffs. Let's have districts, regionals, and areas, and that kind of stuff, and let's try and do this geographically. But there is no question that of the buckets that come into most universities, that the TV money is one of, if not the biggest, and those and that's really important. And people can we can all lament that that's where it's at, and be sad about what was lost. But there was a couple of coaches I saw that come out and kind of bash this realignment move and what it does for the student athlete experience. Well, I guarantee you those same coaches are trying to spend every dollar they can get their hands on. And so they're just as much a part of this as everybody else, because there's just an unquenchable thirst for more from a resource perspective. And when you look at leagues that you compete with and are in your region, so the SEC, the Big Ten for us as well, and they're cashing bigger checks than you are, and you're looking ahead of things and seeing that disparity growing in your fan base. You know, when we play Kentucky in something, they want us to win. They expect us to win. But Kentucky's cashing those SEC checks, and we're not. And so those are real dynamics that go into play. You know, unfortunately, it has definitely caused some realignment head scratchers in terms of just the geography of it all. And I think that's unfortunate. Maybe we get to a place at some point where we do break out some of the sports away from some of the others, because it doesn't make a lot of sense for us to send a soccer team or a volleyball team all the way to Utah and fly over however many schools we fly over. And many times they're on commercial planes, and most of the time they're on commercial planes. And so, you know, I think we're all aware that that's something that's on the radar screen. We need to be thinking about. We need to be talking about. It's going to be a big point of discussion, I would imagine, for us in the Big 12 as we start to talk about scheduling. But it is the byproduct of I mean, you know, TV is not the enemy here. They're contributing hundreds of millions of dollars every year in the athletic programs. But in exchange for that, they have to have the games that are of the most value to them, and that's just part of it.
Yeah, Wren, I've asked that question to many different people, athletic directors, Linda Livingstone, presidents of universities, if that is something. And it seems like there is at least moderate, you know, kind of common sense support for that going forward, because something you'd mentioned about flying commercially, of all the advances we've had in technology over the years and all the things that are happening, commercial flying is not getting easier. And it's probably really hard when you've got 25 athletes and 10 coaches and whoever else on a plane that, you know, has to deal with everything else that just anybody flying has to deal with.
No, there's no question. You know, the amount of equipment and logistics and all of that, and you know, and then you're trying to get, you know, a lot of times athletes, they may have injuries so you're trying to get them in an exit row or an aisle seat, or sometimes they're just big kids, you know, and so it is pretty amazing. You know, at North Texas, our basketball team, we chartered some, but they flew commercially some, and invariably I would get a text from a friend of mine that was on the flight with our team, and some 6'10" kid in the middle row with his legs scrunched up, and so, you know, those are hard. Those are hard to do, and there's a big difference between a flight that is a couple hours and a flight that's 5 hours, right? I mean, that's a significant difference, and so, you know, I think it's important for us to look at, can we schedule in pods or divisions and cut down on travel? Now you're going to hear coaches talk about, you know, equity and did I get all the hard teams and the other divisions easier? But that stuff tends to level out and average out over time. I mean, you look at the basketball teams that are in this league now, for instance, and they all have had moments of great tradition and strong programs. And so any given year, yeah, you could have a cluster where, you know, 2 or 3 of the better teams are in a certain pod, but that's going to, over time, the law of averages will kick in. And we have access to so many metrics now, whether it be KenPom or the net score or, you know, whatever the case may be. There's a lot of objective ways to rank teams when it comes to postseason tournaments and that kind of stuff that doesn't require the head-to-head. Even though the traditionalists and all of us would love that head-to-head data point, we can't diminish the student-athlete experience to a place where we're just chasing head-to-heads, and there was a much cleaner way to schedule and not take near as much of their time.
Wren, I know you've given us a lot of time. When you moved to West Virginia and took over that job, which we're thrilled for you, I mean, it's not been the greatest, you know, whatever, how many months it's been. You had to kind of get involved in some things right from the start. You were ready for that. Did you learn much of that crisis management while working with Mac at Missouri? Can you kind of give us some insight on that?
Yeah. So let me say this first about the job. You do this long enough, and it's like any industry, right? You all are in Texas. You know, the oil and gas. There's been so many booms and busts. And when I was in Missouri, you know, it was always all the big money people in Missouri were farmers, where I was at Northwest Missouri. and they were so tight. And I would always say, like, you're going to have a record year. And they said, yeah, we could have a drought in 2 weeks. In 2 weeks, we could be in the middle of a drought. And so, they're always kind of planning for it. And that's kind of the way it is in athletics. I mean, Baylor had a stretch there where they had a lot of really hard times. And sometimes when it's kind of your turn, that's just the way that it is. You have to deal with it. And so what I have told people is when I was assessed in this job, what I was the most worried about was the family aspect. Heather and I are both from Oklahoma. We had lived in Texas. When we were there at UNT, we were within 3 hours of every family member we had. So my big concern in moving here was, how is this going to impact my family? And I will tell you that even though this is further from home, with my family has loved it. I've made this comment, and I always knock on wood as I say it, but I've not come home to tears one time yet. So, that part has been a joy and a pleasure, and the people here have welcomed us with open arms. And so, the job, eventually, those things will get corrected, what we can correct, and we'll deal with the curveballs that are thrown to us. And we've been thrown a few, but, that if you're going to cash those checks, you have to be ready to do the job. In terms of just managing through that, I would say of all the things that I learned from Mac, communication and leadership during a crisis is probably at the top of that list. And, he is so disciplined in his approach to those situations, so methodical in his communication tree and in the way that he assesses things. He has most of that stuff written out and put in the binder after binder, and I used to make fun of him for it. And I will tell you that of all things I learned from him, and I've learned a lot, and he's a dear, dear friend and mentor. That's probably at the top of the list, and we certainly, that was a rough year that we had at Missouri, but he and I really forged a friendship while we were there, and I learned so much from him during that time, and I'm thankful for it. Now, not so thankful that I won't give him a hard time. I've tried to call him 3 times today to just tell him he is fake news because of the numbers he threw out in distributions yesterday on your show, and you all had to correct it today. So he's ducking my call. He knows what I want, but I'm just going to tell him you're fake news and hang up. That's my plan when he answers.
Okay, now we started the show with that, Wren, and Mac may have been thinking we were talking about a different part of the entrance into the Big 12. So stop. Don't do that. But I know you will, even if we say no. But yeah, we did. We had to start off and kind of make sure.
We've never had to do a retraction before. It's something we're pretty proud of because we're not trying to get things first. We just kind of repeated what he said, but I went back and listened to it, and there could have been some definite clarification on both sides of us going, all right, you said everybody, but when? Because we just kind of left that detail out, and he said it, and we just straight ran through it. Yeah. Good deal. That's what he said. Let's go.
Yeah. Paul wants to work in the Baylor athletic department.
Well, I've already told Kevin Gall to get his boss in line. I'm letting your guys just throw out random numbers on radio shows, man.
Oh my God! And I talked to Kevin a little bit earlier today as well about what you were discussing. Hey, good luck, and it's amazing. This conference continues to blossom and gets bigger, and the networks are behind it, and it's just the start. And now everyone's worried about what's going to happen with the ACC or Cal Stanford or SMU or whatever. We appreciate your time, and you gave us a bunch of it, and have a very great the rest of your Wednesday and the rest of the week.
Well, thank you guys for having me. And let me just say this about the Big 12. You think about where things were, and I was at North Texas, where they were 2 years ago, and where it is today. And we can be disappointed about what's happening in college athletics and the collapse of a Power 5 conference and the way that the geography is getting spread out. But if you're a fan of the Big 12 and a fan of an institution in the Big 12, you have to be celebrating that you went from being in a very precarious position to a position of strength and a position that I think puts us all in a great space moving forward. And I will say this not just because Mac is a friend of mine, but Mac and Linda have both provided great leadership during this time. I mean, Linda is the chair of the CEOs. I mean, she has done a phenomenal job, and Mac has as much or more respect as anybody in that AD room. And so Baylor has certainly been a huge part of shaping the future of the Big 12, and we're excited to be in this together. And there's going to be a lot of bright days ahead.
Thank you, Wren. Great stuff. Classy as well. Thank you for your time. Wren Baker, Director of Athletics at West Virginia. Worked with Mac at Missouri, of course, was at North Texas prior to that. And we appreciate his thoughts on Arizona State, and a lot of fun stuff in there as well, but also some down deep in the clay about what's happening and how college athletics in the Big 12, et cetera, are working.
I think every time we talk to somebody, they mention that. I think that's where it has to go. You have to break football off and basketball. And I think you can do men's and women's basketball, in the big conferences. I think women's basketball would have the best lead on making a women's sports, like getting a foothold in that. And I think that's a good thing to do. Men's and women's basketball, yeah, it might be a little tougher because basketball plays 2 games a week, to do that. But you could make it work in the big conferences basketball better than, because you only play, here's the thing, in a basketball game, you kind of know how long it's going to be. And a lot of these sports, like softball and baseball,
you don't. It's unlimited.
Like volleyball, yeah, there's a limited number of sets, but like it goes pretty quick most of the time. But yeah, you don't know how long it's going to be. Track, you don't know how long. I mean, you don't know how you're going to feel. Like, you may only run a couple of heats, but you're running your heats at your full thing. You've got track athletes are finely tuned, like microchips.
Well, there's no clock.
Yeah, and
in track and field there's an end, there's a finish line, but at the same time that could last forever.
But again, you're also track and field more than anything. Football you can play through, a bit of a pull or this or whatever. You can kind of fight through it. Baseball you can do it. Basketball you can do it. When you are talking about hundredths of a second being the difference between you winning or coming in 5th, then when you have that, even if it's a minor muscle pull, then you've got to deal with those things. So you've got to treat everything differently, like fairly, but differently. Like you can't, and football, you just have to acknowledge that it's this big, gigantic machine, and probably including it in everything that it was the same, even back when the money wasn't the same, was kind of silly.
All right. Thank you, Paul. Craig is at practice. So is Jack McKenzie for the site, and also Craig will be writing about it. Garrett Ross in studio today, juggling. Here's how it works. Well, we had the guest, and then I had reached out to Wren Baker even Sunday night, not knowing when he would be available. And then, of course, today we hear the story that Ray Anderson reached out to West Virginia. I get a text from Wren. He goes, I can do today. And so that was something we didn't know until, what was it, like 2:30 or so?
Yep, about 2:30.
And then also with our next guest, Dan Hope of 11 Warriors on Ohio State in their search for a director of athletics. Thanks to all of you who have been in the text line, 254-339-1122, the chat room as well. Hit the like button as you can. Subscribe if you possibly can. We appreciate your time. Tonight at 10:30 and every weeknight, on the local CW, it is 365 Sports Tonight. Emery Winter puts that baby together with his magic and how he can edit. It is crazy good of what he does. This is 365 Sports. Alan Samuels, Dodge Chrysler Jeep Ram Fiat, Ted Teague. I always enjoy this because I get him. I get a text from him, and it's like clockwork. 1.9% APR for 72 months plus employee pricing right now on all of the 2023 Gladiator Sport, the Willys, the Freedom Edition, plus $1,000 rebate, and get no payments for 90 days. Alan Samuels, your one-stop shop with also 25 Dodge Chargers and Challengers, Scat Packs, and Hellcats in stock, ready to roll. Last call for these high-octane Hemis. Get 2.9% for 72 months in the 2023 Jeep Grand Cherokee, the Limited, plus $3,500 rebate, no payments for 90 days. The 2023 Jeep brand vehicles, excluding the Wagoneer and Grand Wagoneer, 90 days, no payments, and 2.9% financing, 72 months, 1500 Lone Star Bighorn, the Lone Star, the Bighorn, and Laramie trucks. Of course, those are from Ram. 20% off MSRP on the Lone Stars and the Bighorn crew cabs. Alan Samuels, Dodge Chrysler Jeep Ram Fiat, Ted Teague, the CEO and general manager, just east of 84 on Loop 340 in Waco.
I hate my job, but I don't mind getting up in the morning. I dread each day, but I can't wait to get out of bed. You ask me why, and what I'll say to you is true. Well, you can get breakfast tacos at Rudy's Barbecue. Scrambled eggs and brisket, they ain't fooling around. Salsa drap, son, they're the best in town. Barbecue for breakfast, yes, it's true. Put a smile on your morning at Rudy's Barbecue. Next in line.
Boozers is the wedding ring store and more. If you're ready to get engaged or already married and want to upgrade your wife's ring for a special anniversary, Boozers is the place to go. With the largest selection of premier quality diamond engagement rings and wedding rings in Central Texas. They have 7 cases with over 300 styles of rings from top designers like Natalie Kay. Choose from yellow, white, or rose gold, plus beautiful top quality loose diamonds. With an in-house jewelry, they can also custom make anything you want. Bring in a picture or drawing and let Boozers create your one-of-a-kind pendant or ring. They can even use some of your old gold and diamond jewelry to create something new. At Boozers, you'll find a great selection of quality timepieces, and Boozers is the place for expert watch maintenance and repairs too. They specialize in expert Rolex watch repair for fine jewelry, watches, custom work, and more. Go to Boozers on Valley Mills and Lake Air Drive in Waco.
Boozers, the wedding ring store and more.
At Ideal MRI, we feel blessed to be part of the Waco community. We're a small family business here in Central Texas. At times like this, the cost of healthcare has never been more important. And unfortunately, significant illnesses and injuries still occur. And that's why Ideal MRI is open and here to serve you through this difficult time. So if you need an MRI, ask your doctor about Ideal MRI. You can schedule online in minutes at idealmri.com or call 833-IDEAL-MRI.
Waco Regional Tennis and Fitness on Lakeshore Drive is a premier elite life-changing experience where you can change your mind, body, and soul. Waco Regional Tennis and Fitness offers over 40 group exercise classes every week, including boot camp, indoor cycling, bar, silver sneakers, and more. If you haven't been to Waco Regional Tennis and Fitness lately, you're missing out on the improvements. New flooring in the weight room floor and locker rooms, new paint and mirrors added to the weight room and group exercise room, and many new machines have been added and arriving constantly on the weight room floor. New free weights, weight machines, TRX, rowing machines, stationary bikes, new treadmills, new ellipticals on the spacious weight room floor. Personal training with Christy London, Randall Corley, Alex Box, and welcome to Nathan Roach, where you will be encouraged and motivated to grow. A kids club included with your membership, plus sauna, whirlpool, and tanning bed. 16 tennis courts plus a beautiful stadium court, and longtime youth tennis pro Britt Coleman and assistant junior Kenna. Adult tennis lessons and clinics with Blake, and the commitment to pickleball with 8 courts and instructor Jody Thurman. Visit the website at wacotennis.com or visit us at Waco Regional Tennis and Fitness next to Hawaiian Falls on Lakeshore Drive in Waco.
.365 Sports is turbocharged by Unite Private Networks. Find out more at uniteprivatenetworks.com.
You know, we put so much so far these first couple of hours into what has been a craziness of college football realignment and more. And then, oh, by the way, there are stories that go along the way. And we had some of the quotes from Kirk Schultz, Washington State, among some expansion thoughts in the ACC. And then there's Gene Smith, the athletic director of one of the most powerful universities in the country, a big boys school in Ohio State. And we're joined by Dan Hope, the 11 Warriors, who joins us on 365 Sports. Was this something that was surprising? Had it been rumored? Your thoughts, Dan? Thank you.
Yeah, it's funny you say the craziness of college football, because when we were told yesterday that there was going to be a press conference with Gene Smith this morning, I thought, it's just we're going to talk to him about Oregon and Washington. You know, he's an influential voice in those conversations with the Big Ten. And so I thought that we were just going to be talking to him about Big Ten expansion. And then we found out that he was going to be retiring today. So it was definitely not something that, we had heard about before this morning. But sounds like something that, he had been thinking about for a while and decided now is the right time to make that announcement.
Dan, he's kind of a titan in the industry, not kind of. He is a titan in the industry of athletic directors, and he has been very instrumental in building up one of the best athletic departments in the country. Obviously, Ohio State probably have to worry about who they're going to hire because they're going to get a lot of good applicants, but will this leave a bit of a void because he was so huge and influential in this role?
Yeah, I mean, you talk about a guy who, by the time he's done next year is going to have been at Ohio State for 19 years. That's a long time to be the athletic director at one school, which certainly tells you the kind of influence that he has had, not only at Ohio State, but in the Big Ten and across college sports nationally. So I think definitely it leaves huge shoes to fill for sure, because he's somebody that, like you said, he's a titan in the industry. He's not just somebody who has made a big impact on Ohio State sports. He's somebody who has been a very influential voice in conversations about college sports at the national level. I mean, he's somebody who, the NCAA had on the panel a few years ago when they realized that, NIL was going to become a thing. He was one of the people that they trusted to kind of help them, figure out how to navigate that new world. And he's somebody who has been in a lot of those kind of committees over the years. And so definitely I think he leaves huge shoes to fill, and whoever ends up filling those shoes is certainly going to have a significant voice as well, just based on the position they'll be taking over.
So he was once at Iowa State, once at Arizona State. They're about to be a part of the same conference. You mentioned Washington and Oregon, which came down in a flurry on Friday. What are your thoughts as a guy who covers, obviously, Ohio State, but the Big Ten, and the addition of two pretty damn big names?
Yeah, I mean, it's the new world of college football, right? Where we're seeing that, 10 years ago that, we just kind of looked at the Big Ten as a Midwest conference, and now they're becoming this national conference, and really now, staking claim to, what you'd probably consider the four biggest brands on the West Coast in college sports. And so, I think, there was always kind of a thought after they added USC and UCLA a year ago that, Oregon and Washington would probably eventually end up in the Big Ten. And, they were reticent to do it at the time. It sounds like, based on what we heard from Gene Smith today, that, a lot of it ultimately coming to pass this past week was Fox stepping up and saying, we'll give you more money to add Oregon and Washington. And obviously money talks in these conversations. And so, I think once the financials worked out, there was an agreement within the Big Ten that, adding, two more big brands to the conference was something that would be good for business going forward.
Does this, do Ohio State fans get nervous about this? This is one more team in the way, or how do they feel about it?
Yeah, I mean, I think the thing about it is obviously going to coincide with the expansion to 12-team playoff, right? So it's not necessarily, you're going to add these teams to the conference, but it's not like they're all going to be competing for one playoff berth anymore. Now they could be competing for several playoff berths, and I think that's certainly, from the Big Ten's perspective, one of the biggest reasons why they're adding these schools is because when this playoff starts, they want to have 3 or 4 teams in the playoff every year, and now, particularly it seems like USC, Washington, Oregon, I mean, teams that have all been in that conversation before, it just gives you that many more teams who can be in that conversation. And so certainly I think it's going to make the Big Ten more competitive. And I think it's definitely going to change the landscape a little bit for Ohio State because, in recent years, it's really been Ohio State versus Michigan, Penn State in there a little bit as well. But you've kind of had those 3 teams and then a big drop off in the Big Ten. That's going to change in a big way next year where you're going to be adding in teams that are certainly going to be real contenders in that conference.
Yeah, those are 2 out. They're not. I mean, they have been. Washington, obviously, this year, of course, they're all going to be pretty good in the Pac-12. It looks like to me. Penn State. Speaking of them, I know Ohio State and Michigan is like the 1 and 1A, and of course, you got to put them in the right order depending on who you're talking to. But I see a lot of smoke about how good they might be. Are they ready for that level?
I think they are. I think you look at the roster that they have this year. I think this is going to be the strongest roster they've had in several years. We kind of saw them, kind of a mid, 2010s there, kind of made that surge to really becoming a top contender in the Big Ten, and they've kind of taken a step back here for a few years. But I think this year they're set up. I think with Drew Aller taking over at quarterback, I think there's a lot of excitement about what he can bring to that offense. they've got, two really good running backs and Nick Singleton and Katron Allen, and they've got a lot of talent on the defensive side of the ball as well. And so I think they are very much going to be a contender this year. And I think that 3-team race at the top of the Big Ten East with Michigan, Ohio State, and Penn State is going to be very interesting.
Who's the quarterback at OSU?
I lean toward Kyle McCord, but we still have not gotten clarity on that. When Ryan Day was asked about it today, he said it's been a really good battle and it's still back and forth. So, I think they're hoping to get some clarity this week. They're going to have their first real scrimmage of preseason camp on Saturday. And so I think, that's going to be a big opportunity for both of those guys. I think Devin Brown is performing well enough to make it a tough decision on him. But I think until I hear that, Devin Brown's going to be the starter, I'm going to continue to lean back toward Kyle McCord because he does have that extra year of experience in the system. He's been the backup for the past 2 years. He's even started a game and won a Big Ten Freshman of the Week award for Ohio State. And so I do think, it's always kind of been Kyle McCord's job to lose, but he still hasn't necessarily separated himself to win it yet.
Dan, I don't know if I asked you this, and I should have, but is there someone that is the obvious target to replace Gene Smith as the AD?
Well, the first name that I've heard today is Pat Chun, who's currently the athletic director at Washington State. He's an Ohio State alum. He worked at Ohio State for 15 years, many of those years alongside Gene Smith. So, the early intel that I have heard is that he's somebody who could be a front runner for the job. But a thing to factor in here is Ohio State's also currently searching for a new president. They haven't even named a new president. And so obviously no decision can really be made until they've hired a new president first. But from what I've heard, Pat Chun from Washington State is definitely a name to watch here. I think, two other names that you can also throw in there are Heather Lyke at Pitt and Martin Jarmond at UCLA, because they also both worked at Ohio State for a long time, worked alongside Gene Smith. I do think that, it's likely that Ohio State is going to hire someone who previously worked alongside Gene Smith, who has experience working at Ohio State, because it's not like Ohio State's going to be looking for radical change here. I think Ohio State's going to want to keep things running pretty similarly to the way they've already been run. So I think it is very likely that Ohio State is going to look for someone who, has been an athletic director elsewhere and has that experience, but who is very familiar with how things already operate at Ohio State.
By the way, Pat Chun today, I think just a few minutes ago, has had a press conference where he's kind of laying out on the table everything that went wrong and why they've taken some, well-deserved shots at Pac-12 leadership.
Yeah, you could probably kind of see why that he might be looking for a new job. I think he's someone who would probably be a natural candidate regardless, because he grew up in Ohio. He went to Ohio State. And so I think he's somebody who's long been on that list of potential successors for Ohio State. But, he's in a position right now with everything that's going on at Washington State that, if I was in his shoes and I was getting a potential opportunity to go to Ohio State, I'd probably be looking at it too.
Thank you very much. Appreciate your time, Dan. Great stuff. Always great to have you on when we talk Ohio State and also the Big Ten. Dan Hope, 11 Warriors on the Ohio State story that AD Gene Smith will retire in a little less than a year in July of next year. Craig Smoak is back from practice. Anything in particular that jumped out at you at all? I know it's kind of boring at times, the amount of time you guys get to be there.
McGurd, it's hot. Man, it was a hot one out there. Now back in this nice, cool studio. But, yeah, one personnel note, just not starting any rumors or anything, but because of the Quaylon Jones, dismissal that we learned about last week, looking out there today, and Grayson pointed out that Bryson Washington wasn't out there, and that could be anything. That could be like he has a class, that conflicted, or he's got something to take care of, but just because of the Quaylon Jones news and what happened last year, you saw how injury is suddenly depleted and you had a true freshman out there taking the bulk of your carries. That is something to monitor if Bryson Washington is sidelined for any amount of time. But again, not starting any speculation, just saying it was notable he's not out there because it's now a very small group, because you had 2 less running backs on scholarship in that group now. So it's like a handful of guys when it should be, or less than a handful when it should be, 6 or 7 almost. But that was, something that stuck out. And then just really more than anything was the fact that the indoor facility is now 100 yards, and that's complete as far as the length of it, but they're still doing a lot of the decorations and finishing touches, and just the way that the new football ops center has started to grow as well. Like, it used to just be, you'd stand and look at the towards the river, and the practice field's in front of you, so the practice field's between you and the river, and the indoor's like right here, and over here's McLean Stadium across the river, and you can see it very clearly, and there's nothing else. But now it's like McLean way off in the distance, and then boom, big buildings taking shape, and then boom, huge indoor compared to what it was. And so it feels like you're in a totally different place than we've seen in the last several years, which is just progress and probably overdue need for facilities like that. So that was just cool to see how far that's come along since the springtime. But yeah, just kind of thin at running back today. So we'll see how that goes. And, outside of that, I think everything was kind of business as usual, but good to just see them out there since I was on vacation and hadn't been able to be at a practice yet.
You know, it's interesting. That running back room was supposed to be their depth as far as because of and now Quaylen Jones, Bryson Washington, we'll see on that. And Jordan Jenkins, it's time for him, a young man from Lindale who can be a mover. He can move the pile. He's a big kid from Lindale and also with pretty good speed. So they need, and I reached out to Chris Cochran, the head coach at Lindale, about what he had heard, anything at all from the Baylor staff on him. Just that was after the Quaylen Jones story.
Well, when you're a team that runs wide zone, and your bread and butter's the running game, and then you have concerns about, how lethal can your quarterback be if he has to go throw you to a win. Suddenly you got a thin running back room for the second year in a row, potentially. Like I said, potentially. So looked small today. We'll see how it progresses and who's back out there to give them some more depth, but just something to monitor. And Paul brought up that Pat Chun. I guess all the Wazzu officials are making the media rounds today.
Yeah.
And I've already seen some comments of, too little, too late and whatnot, and that's true. But Pat Chun's quote that Paul was referring to, there's a century of history that has gone by the wayside because this conference has mismanaged itself on a bunch of different levels, and when you have poor leadership, one of the outcomes is failure. That's what has happened to the Pac-12.
Yeah, that's unfortunate. And then again, Kirk Schultz, the president, was one of those that you heard a lot from, probably more from him than anyone else, and how positive he was. And you got to wonder if he looks around and goes, man, what the hell, George?
And yeah, especially he and Washington and Oregon State, because they knew that their options were going to be very limited when the Pac-12, like they were going to be, of the 12 teams, they're going to be 11 and 12 in line to be picked. So, when everybody was picking for kickball teams, they knew they were going to be at the end. And fairly or unfairly, based on where they just their actual physical location, and the name recognition, I guess. But yeah, of course. So they had to fight harder for the Pac-12 than everybody else. And then when they did all that, because they didn't have other options, and the fighting for that conference was placed kind of squarely on their backs because they had less options. As soon as those other options open up for other people, you had to feel really burned because you're like, well, we were here doing all this because we were trying to make it work, and then you have to wonder if anybody's heart was really all 100% in it.
Especially with the news that Cal Stanford are having discussions with the ACC, right?
Well, and I would think that especially Oregon and Washington are the one I would think is, so we've been doing this whole year, kind of knowing you guys' hearts aren't really all in this. Like just waiting for that opportunity, and then Colorado kind of gave it to them.
Yeah. So they started the process, and then they opened the door where it was kind of shut beforehand. But yeah, the Notre Dame thing, I saw that tweet about their influence, if you will. And it's interesting because I started to, form a tweet. I don't tweet a lot, but I'm trying to football season. I'll be back to it a lot more regularly now. But I started to form a tweet and I stopped it because I had to go. But I was wondering, if you're the ACC, tell Notre Dame, but you can't because they have so much leverage that you really can't force them to do anything. That's why always hear this eventually Notre Dame's going to be forced to do something. It's like, okay, well, let me know when that day comes because it's not coming with the ACC. They're not going to force them to do squat. They're at their mercy, if anything. Yeah, sure, one day down the line when there's no room but to do something, then maybe they're forced into the SEC or the Big Ten. But until that happens, they're going to flex their muscle and basically partially control the ACC without being a full member, and that's just pretty crazy.
It's just so weird that they could be like, we'd like you to really add these teams, and are you coming in? They're like, no,
we're
just telling you what to do.
Yeah.
Would this make you want to come in? Probably not, but It'd make us happy.
By the way, a couple of days ago, we had the discussion about teams that have left the conference, and it seems like now that list is just almost hard to even keep up with the newest changes next year that we know about. John Cunningham on the replay a couple of nights ago mentioned that one of the schools we did not bring up, he wasn't like, hey, you guys, he was just helping. He goes, one of the schools that changed conferences, remember the Big East changed. Pittsburgh went to the ACC, and they recently won the ACC. So that was another one that we did not mention as a team that had left the conference who has had at least some success where they are.
That's Jordan Addison too, and they've had some things.
Who was the guy that's a quarterback that was so good?
Kenny Pickett.
Yep.
Yeah, Kenny Pickett was great with Jordan Addison. That was a nice, I guess, correction or what have you, and we appreciate that, especially when it's done nicely. It's not like, you idiot, like how could you? It's like. Thank you for doing it a different way, and that's one that needs to be mentioned. But as far as the Big 12, which I think is where that conversation started, it's been very middle of the road, more misses than hits. And at some point, Paul, have you watched the Johnny documentary? Because I was going to go relive A&M's last great run.
I watched it last night.
I watched it this morning while I was doing the Stairmaster, and it's really, really good. If you haven't watched it, I do recommend it. Yep.
But that was, when A&M appeared to be in its bag, literally and figuratively, and they still are, so to speak, but just chasing that same type of success. I'll tell you what was crazy to me, and we can maybe do a segment, like not today, but at some other point on the deal is I just totally forget that there was another year after the Heisman. It's like, he came back, right?
Yeah.
Like, I totally blanked that out. I just thought he won the Heisman and rode off to Cleveland. And no, there was a whole another year after that. And it was wild.
Better if there wouldn't have been another year.
Yeah, no, it would have. I remember it all too well.
Right.
But yeah, it was weird because it was watching it, and I had so many memories of that year, covering it with my, watching games, like going to games when we didn't have a Baylor game. I was at that first one. I was at a couple more. Every time because Johnny football was so exciting, anytime that Kyle Louie, our friend, would ask me, like, do you and your dad want to go to the game? I'm like, yeah, Baylor's off. They're on the road this weekend. We don't have anything to do. Let's go. And so I went to I think 3 at Kyle Field, and then I went to that Cotton Bowl game. And
man, that was something.
One of the guys I wish we could have heard from in the documentary was Ryan Swope, who was was a really, really good wide receiver for them.
Yeah, no, he was terrific, and not necessarily as a stats guy, but he deserves a lot of love for the role he played in that offense. Like, absolutely, yeah.
So my favorite Johnny football memory was I went to go cover that Cotton Bowl game, and you've heard me talk about it from Bob Stoops' end, like going to that Bob Stoops press conference and how befuddled he was, and expecting to be mad and be like, look, he's just unbelievable, and they got Mike Evans, and what are you going to do? And after that, I walked out of there, and I walked around the corner where the Aggies were having their media availability, and that year, Ryan Swope's sister, Reagan, was one of our interns. I think that was before you came.
No, it wasn't.
Craig.
Oh, Craig, yeah.
Craig.
Well before, yeah.
Yeah, so we had Reagan, and so I had texted her and said, like, hey, can you tell your brother to just, like, hang out for a second and wait for me? Because I'd like to at least just talk to him face-to-face. We hadn't gotten to all year, and tell him, talk to my sister. And so I walked in, and I said, hey, Ryan, I'm Paul. And we started talking for a second, and we started talking about the game. And I remember saying, like, do you ever, like, turn around and watching him going, holy bleep? And he said, all the time. Yeah. He said, there were times during that game where he thought, well, this drive's over, and then I'm over on the other side of the field, and I see Evans get a 38-yard gain. I'm like, how did this happen?
Yeah.
And we had Ryan on, remember?
Sorry, I want to clear before we get another correction on the post show of Ryan Swope. Like, he had big stats, don't get me wrong, but it's like his role was so much more than numbers is what I'm trying to say. Like, within that offense and the way that it worked, but he put up some digits as well. He was a great player, man. Him, Mike Evans, Johnny Football. I mean, they were loaded.
Yeah, and it's just it's a very A&M thing to have that moment, and then they just haven't been able to sustain. It was this great little moment in time, and for many different reasons, haven't been able to sustain it. Now, look, Kyle Field is now the house that Johnny built.
No,
no,
it was already built, but
the new one.
It led to the new one.
Yeah, the new one,
like RG3 and McLean Stadium.
Yeah, the new one is very much because it's nothing like it used to be at all. It is spectacular, and it was already a great venue, but it wasn't bells and whistles like it has now. So yeah, that was good. It was really interesting to watch, and I hope I'm a person who genuinely have been entertained by Johnny and all that. I hope that good things are ahead for him in his life. I mean, it's hard to see somebody go through all that and through their own bad choices, but even still, I just hope that things are on the up for him.
No, it's a story that a lot of people love the climb, and more people love it when somebody then falls. And he went through that, and where he ends up and what he ends up doing, good luck to him on that. And a lot of it, even though it was against NCAA rules, a lot of what maybe he went through or what he did could have opened the door for what we have now. You imagine the amount of money he would have made in the NIL era? My God, it would have been unbelievable. Kyle Whittingham, the head coach at Utah, giving an update on Cam Rising. Baylor plays Utah in week number, 2. Cam is under the same restrictions, and the other 3 guys are taking reps. Our first extensive live work will be Thursday. We've got a big scrimmage on Thursday. Hopefully by Monday we'll have a pecking order, and continue to progress with the quarterback position. Cam is in the mode. He's in until doctors tell us he can progress from there. Of course, the starting quarterback who got hurt in the Rose Bowl and trying to get back on the field, Baylor, Utah, that second week in September. And one other note, the Stanford quote, do you have that one, Garrett? Stanford head coach Troy Taylor, of course, they're on the outside right now looking in a story that was about Stanford's situation. I think the players that committed to us came here. They want to play Power 5 football. That is what our intention is with this university. I can't imagine anything else from Troy Taylor, the head coach at Stanford. This is 365 Sports. One of the fastest growing sports right now in America is pickleball. And right now at Waco Regional Tennis and Fitness on Lakeshore Drive, they have private and also group lessons available. Private lessons for $50 an hour, semi-private based on the number in the group. Jody Thurman is the pickleball instructor at the gym at Waco Regional Tennis and Fitness. Also, speaking of pickleball, they took a couple of tennis courts and turned them into like 8 pickleball courts, and it's always crowded. If you haven't been there and you are a tennis person, Brett Coleman, the youth tennis instructor, a long time. This guy is just stud at what he does. 16 tennis courts, beautiful stadium court, longtime youth tennis pro in Britt Coleman. The assistant is junior pro Kenna. She came from Iowa State. In the adult tennis lessons and clinics with Blake, the commitment to pickleball and tennis is obvious when you walk out the back door at Waco Regional Tennis and Fitness on Lakeshore Drive in Waco.
In our logo and advertising, we say we are people that you can count on. What does that mean? It starts with providing a quality vehicle and quality service at a fair price. But it also means we do what we say we will do, and we treat people fairly with respect. It starts by hiring great people, good local folks who work hard with a caring attitude. Our employees are the real reason we are people that you can count on. Put us to the test and see for yourself that at Richard Carr Motors, we are people you can count on.
Petty Clinic Men's Healthcare in Woodway is now proud to offer you men an exceptional weight management body sculpting product called semaglutide, also known as Ozempic or Wegovy. Semaglutide is an FDA-approved weight management medication. Once-a-week injections of this powerful medication offers an average body fat weight loss of 20% within the first year of treatment. In addition to body sculpting, semaglutide also normalizes blood sugars and has the clinical research proof of reducing blood pressure, cholesterol, stroke, and heart attack risk. If you're like most men and you have stubborn fat that will just not respond to typical diets and exercise, then help is finally here. Semaglutide, affordable, highly effective. Google search Petty Clinic Waco and reach out to the Petty Clinic team today for a free consultation with Dr. Petty to see if semaglutide is right for you. Go to pettycliniclowt.com.
One size fits all. That may be all right for an adjustable belt or cheap sunglasses, but when it comes to your financial needs, no one wants a one-size-fits-all strategy. Cam Heathcott, your Edward Jones financial advisor, knows that his most important goals are yours. That's why we take the time to understand your needs, knowing you. That's how Edward Jones makes sense of investing. Cam Heathcott in Conroe at 936-756-7717. Edward Jones, member SIPC.
At
Ideal MRI, we feel blessed to be a part of the Waco community. We're a small family business right here in Central Texas, and our goal is to bring down the cost of healthcare while maintaining high quality. At times like this, the cost of healthcare has never been more important, and unfortunately, significant illnesses and injuries still occur. That's why Ideal MRI is open and here to serve you through the difficult time. We offer premium MRIs just like a hospital with state-of-the-art technology and specialists, but you'll pay less. Sometimes thousands of dollars less, whether you're using insurance or not. At Ideal MRI, we accept most insurance and there are no hidden costs, even offering financing if that's needed. Everything included in the price, and you'll not get something as a surprise in the mail later on. If you need an MRI, ask your doctor about Ideal MRI. They'll know. You can schedule an appointment safely from home online in minutes at idealmri.com or give us a call, 833-IDEAL-MRI, idealmri.com.
TFNB Your Bank for Life is the official local bank of Baylor Athletics. Find out why more Central Texas are making TFNB their bank for life. Sign up for our Edge checking and savings accounts to earn interest or cash back. With 5 convenient locations and an award-winning mobile app, banking has never been easier. TFNB, your bank for life. Member FDIC.
Welcome back to 365 Sports, powered by Sikkim365.com. It's time for our weekly segment with John Machoda of The Athletic, brought to you by Pioneer Steel and Pipe, where customer service is their main focus, and best in metal, steel, and pipe for large or small projects, with 2 locations in Waco and Bryan. Family owned and operated since 1943.
John Machoda, theathletic.com with us. Paul Catalina, Craig Smoak. And I'm David Smoak. John joins us on 365 Sports. So I saw where even among the European soccer dynasties or franchises, the Cowboys are now the most valuable sports franchise right now, currently in the world?
Yeah, I think it was Sportico had that out there. I want to say that they did move past a few of those European soccer teams a few years back. I could be wrong on this, but I know that it is one of those things for Forbes, like, to report on it at least once a year, sometimes multiple times per year. But this most recent list that came out by Sportico, I saw them at like a little over $9 billion. And whenever those come out, I'm sure it's the same for you guys. It's one of those, okay, what do you think they're really worth? And I'm telling you, I don't think that Jerry Jones would sell the Cowboys for, I know there's no way 10 billion, but I don't even know if he would sell them for 50 billion, to be honest with you. So the actual valuation of the team with Jerry Jones off the charts, but when you see some of these other teams that have been sold, even if Jerry was interested and was looking to sell, I don't see how the Cowboys go for anything under 10. And probably I would think that negotiations would start around 12 to 15.
Oh, that's going to be one of those things that Jerry's great grandkids will finally cop and sell it when they're over football.
So, okay, and that is an interesting point, but the only reason why I don't think that will even happen, again, being a guy from Detroit, so with the Lions, they've done nothing since the 50s to make, well, really since the current family bought it. I believe William Clay Ford bought the team. It was right around the same time when John F. Kennedy was assassinated. So we're talking 63, and they had F win since then, and the value of the Lions goes up every year tremendously. So even if you're not that into football and you're not having success running the team, like, it's still the value of it. I mean, I'm sure there's other things. I'm not very business savvy. I'm sure there are other things out there, but I can't think of anything off the top of my head that you really don't even have to be good at running it, and it just continues to grow in value, like on the level that an NFL franchise has. And so the only way I think that even something like that would happen is if, like, the NFL totally was, it went down the drain for like over a decade and they were like losing money on the team. I just feel very confident saying that's probably not happening in my lifetime.
Well, if Daniel Snyder can run that franchise in Washington into the ground and still make $6 billion from what he bought it for, there's the example right there, right?
No question. No, that's probably an even better one. Sometimes I get biased with growing up a Lions fan, but no, absolutely. No, Washington, that is a great example because they were just recently sold. So yeah, think he got it in 99, 2000, around that time. And, man, since then, Washington is right there with the Lions as one of the worst franchises in all of sports. So, yes, that is a great point.
John, how concerned should the Cowboys be about Mazi Smith?
I would say yesterday when I left practice, maybe a little bit, just because we didn't see him, and then you start hearing he's getting an MRI. That's obviously never – you don't really want to hear that, but it sounds like it was just for precautionary reasons. But then this morning we were out at the walkthrough. Mazi was out there. Tyler Biadasz, another player that left practice. Both these guys are you would think would be wearing some type of braces and things like that, even though it's a walkthrough. And both of them were fine, moving around well. So it sounds like they dodged a bullet with both of those injuries that came out of yesterday's practice. But, yeah, Mazi was out there. Doesn't sound like it's anything of major concern, and that's good because if somebody asks me, hey, who's the number one player that you're looking forward to watching on Saturday, it's really not close for me. It's Mazi Smith, and then the gap to whoever two is quite considerable. So from a selfish standpoint, I was glad to see him back out there, and I hope that means that he'll be playing Saturday because this will be a great test to see what they really have so far in the first-round pick.
Yeah, now they had the injury that kind of flared up yesterday, right, with Biadasz?
Yeah, but he's back, right?
Yeah, he was back. I saw through the walkthrough, but how much would that have upset the apple cart? Because that's right there in the middle of the offensive line.
No question. And, yeah, it was an ankle. I believe it's his right ankle. And there's been a couple different times here at camp where he's gone down in a team drill and was a little slow to get up. So that's why I was kind of like, ooh, is this kind of like this has been kind of building up, and then he re-aggravated it. But he's moving around pretty well today. Again, no, he wasn't wearing a brace or anything like that. So I don't think he was never going to play in this first preseason game anyway. But it'd be a huge loss if they were to be without him because not only the Zach Martin situation is still unresolved, but just the fact of, if I'm doing a list of the biggest question marks on the Cowboys team right now going into this season, kickers obviously high in that list. But I would say backup running back and then that depth on the offensive line are the other, two things that I would put in that same category of there's a lot of question marks there. It'd be one thing if they had drafted a interior offensive lineman pretty high and you're just like, well, this is going to give that player more work. But it's opening the door for a lot more work for, Josh Ball and Matt Farniak and Brock Hoffman and a few others. And I don't know. It's hard to get a lot out of these practices. So again, Saturday will be a great time to watch them, those guys, because with Zach Martin and Tyler Biadasz or without them, in both cases, they need help with their depth of their offensive line.
I know you'll do a roster projection here soon because you have to do them throughout camp. Is there anybody, if you had to do it today, that would surprise you being on or off it had you, written it 2 weeks ago?
Off is going to be tough because it is going to be a really tough roster to trim down to 53. Mike McCarthy said that at the beginning of camp, and it's so true. The longer that we're out here, the more I see it too. Where I know exactly what he's talking about. It's not going to be an easy 53. It'll be the most difficult for him since he's been their Cowboys head coach on trimming this one down. There's just a lot of players that you're like, man, yeah, this guy, you could really use him. You don't want to see him go to another team, but hey, we can only keep 53. But in terms of let's say when I arrived here till now, some players that surprised me. Jalen Brooks is very high on my list, 7th round draft pick at wide receiver. That they cut the roster down today. I don't see any way that they could let him go, and that was not someone I would have thought of when we went to camp. I was kind of on that bubble of, are they going to keep 5 receivers? Are they going to keep 6? For me, I don't see how if they cut the roster today, they would keep less than 6 because you'd get your starting 3, and then the next 3. To me, from what I've seen, it's Jalen Tolbert would be 4, Kevontae Turpin 5, and then Jalen Brooks 6. And I don't know how they can move on in a different direction there because they would not want to see him go to another team. He's just been really solid in camp. Eric Scott, their 6th round draft pick corner, another guy that's really been very solid that a lot of people out here have been talking about. So those two for sure, just because they're from this rookie class that when I got here, I was like, yeah, I don't know if I'll have them on the 53. And then now I'm kind of looking at it as like, yeah, you probably have to. So maybe they go thin on the offensive line on the initial 53 and maybe sign a player or add somebody off of a different team. And then that way they can keep some of these other players. But those two certainly jump out.
John, can you try, for those who've never taken the drive, and I don't know how many times you've driven from Oxnard down Highway 1 to Malibu, try to describe that view of what you see?
It's so good that, I've been down here, for over a decade coming out for Cowboys camp, and I never pass up on a chance to drive down it. I'll probably do it again today. Won't go as far as Malibu, but just to get out there whenever I get a chance, because it's so beautiful. And especially like if you're around a reporter who hasn't been out here, I always make sure to go down there just to show them, like, because it's easy to get caught up in just staying around Oxnard because you got camp every day and you got things going on. But it is incredible. It just never gets old. And really for me, like, I love it really. I mean, now, not all in once, but in my life now, I've done it from San Francisco all the way down to San Diego. And there are some parts up once you get out of San Francisco. There are a few, like Big Sur area, where there's some bridges and some things that they put in there that are just so beautiful. And you've seen them in commercials and movies and things like that. And it just leaves you scratching your head. Like, I don't know how human beings were able to create this.
Mm-hmm.
And it really, that whole Highway 1, it just amazing how, I mean, it's like beautiful mountains on one side and the beautiful ocean on the other. And it just, man, it never gets old. I'd love to know that. I'm a bad person to ask. The best person to ask on something like this would be somebody that owns one of those houses in let's say, like, right on the water over in Santa Barbara, or even the ones back down by Malibu. I wonder, how long did it take you to sit there and look out your back window and see that view? And then you were just like, yeah, I'm kind of used to it now, because I just can never see that happen.
Oh my God. No. Yeah, no, absolutely. It's gorgeous. It's worth the drive. We'd go down there and go to this little fish place off of Highway 1. It was a little hole in the wall, and sit there and look across.
Neptune's Net.
Yep, Neptune's Net. It was fantastic. John, great stuff as always. Yeah, Craig?
Is Florida State joining the SEC, the Big Ten? Where are we going, John?
Yeah,
where are
John.
the Noles headed?
Man, the SEC sounds great to me, just because, the competition gets tougher, but, it's such an arms race. It's about the dollar. So wherever they can make more money off the TV deal, that's where they got to go. I know that people that like the traditional rivalries are going to hate that, but I'm a Florida State football fan. I'm not really a fan of the other programs. So for them to have the ultimate success going forward, I don't know how you do it, not getting in one of those. You cannot be having New Jersey, Rutgers getting more money off TV deals than Florida State football. I mean, that's just not good for business of going forward, of competing for multiple national championships. So SEC makes the most sense to me, but if it's the Big Ten, so be it, that would be the most ironic for me, because I became a Florida State football fan because Big Ten football was boring to me as a kid. So it just would be ironic to see how that works out if they were to join the league that I got bored with.
Did you send the copy points and write the teleprompter script for the FSU president during the Board of Regents meeting? Because it sounds like you did.
I didn't, but I mean, I don't know. I just look at the landscape of all of college football. It doesn't matter, who you're talking about. Baylor, Florida State, Alabama, Georgia. Like, it is such an arms race, and I've been fortunate that I've been able to go to quite a few Florida State road games and getting a chance to just seeing the way, like, other teams' facilities are. I remember going to Clemson and things like that. And you just, everywhere you go, you're just like, man, it's just, you can never be happy and content with what you have. It's always going to be bigger. It's always going to be better. The locker room's got to be redone. The stadium has to have additions. They got to do this stuff. Because if you're not doing it, somebody else is. And if they're doing it, they're going to start winning the recruiting battles and getting the guys that you're supposed to get. And I'm not saying that this is the right way to do it. I'm just saying that's just the way you see how business works in college football. And it's such big business that, if you don't stay with it, you're going to get left behind.
Absolutely. Thanks for your time, man. Enjoy it. I know you are. That's John Machoda in Oxnard with the Cowboys at training camp. We appreciate his feedback. Brett McMurphy had a note. This might have been late last night, but the Pac-12 Bowls starting to look at the tie-ins and might even have conferences have two teams playing each other in the same bowl game that may not have played each other because conferences have gotten so big that wouldn't be like a rematch type game.
Yeah, when I first read that, I was like, I don't know. But, I mean, you got to do what you got to do. And I don't think the bowls are really planning on going away. I mean, shoot, now it's all open. Now they're going to have, gambling sponsors and, all that as shortly. So I don't think that's going to be headed anywhere but, staying at peak number of games, if not adding more. So, yeah, there's a chance that could happen. And, look, I guess the upside is that if you get so big, there's going to be a lot of teams you didn't play in conference. So you're going to have like 7 choices rather than just that one team that you didn't get around to. I do wonder, though, I don't know if it was that tweet from last night or if it was another one that talked about how, I think maybe one of them's the Vegas Bowl or attached to Las Vegas. And who's going to go claim that? because that's out there. I mean, with the Pac-12's demise, and not to say that they owned it anyways, but they did have their media days there. That is more West than it is, any of the other regions really. So I'm very curious of now college football in this next phase and its relationship with Las Vegas.
I do think that one of the things, I think we kind of broached this in during the holidays, during the bowl times, maybe even in a top 5 or something, where maybe it's just time to, I know the bowls are independent entities and nonprofits, and that's been some shady stuff over the years. Just ask the Fiesta Sugar and Orange Bowls about some of the controversy that's gone on behind the scenes there and what they've done. But maybe if we're going to keep the bowls and the playoff, let college football playoff take over all the bowls and kind of shuffle up the tie-in so it gets more interesting. Or
don't they that the standings, don't they, is that not
but
tied
there's
in?
Conference tie-ins.
Yeah.
Do you know, remember Oklahoma last year?
Yeah.
Jumping the line to get and play in Florida State?
So yeah, make it
not their fault, by the way.
Make it make more sense to everybody around, because now conference tie-ins, again, you're the Emerald Pistachio Bowl up in San Francisco that you were having a Pac-12 team and an ACC team, and now there's no Pac-12. You didn't do anything to deserve that.
No.
You were just trying to be a bowl game.
Yeah. Coming up, Paul Catalina at his top 5. We do appreciate everybody every day. I try to dip into the chat room whenever I can. I know there's a lot of, I tell you what I've learned, but we knew this, and what makes it really even worse for an Oregon State or a Washington State fan, and a lot of you, and especially like Connor and a couple others that have been inside of our chat room, you have the passion to be a part of a real football conference. You really do. I mean, I just don't give up the hope. I know it doesn't look good. And then Oregon State, of course, this year, a highly ranked team. And Washington State with what they've done to bring in numbers, it sucks. But I want to tell you, those who are in the chat room, we do appreciate your passion for your fan bases. But by God, that's what it's really. You still wish that was what it was about, but we know it's different than that. When we come back, Paul Catalina and his top 5.
Highway 6 is a mess right now here in the Waco area. So at Richard Carr, they are trying harder to make buying a new Buick, GMC, or Cadillac far easier. Right now, most 2023 GMC Sierra 1500s are discounted thousands. Qualified buyers can finance for 0.9%. And with dozens of Sierras on the lot, Richard Carr has the inventory you're looking for, plus the price and the financing to get you in a new GMC Sierra today. They've also got the Buicks, ranked #1 overall brand for new vehicle quality by J.D. Powers. How about a luxury SUV without the luxury price? Right now, save $3,250 on a new 2023 Buick Encore GX, plus qualified buyers get 1.9% financing and no payments until 2024. I know that can get a little bit confusing, so you can visit the website, give them a phone call, or drop by the dealership and get the numbers and get the pricing and the percentages, and they will all make that very, very easy for you, because customer service is their #1 goal. But look, it doesn't have to be a new car either. If you're looking to buy pre-owned, well, they can take care of that as well. They've got dozens of quality pre-owned cars and trucks in stock, many of them under $25,000. So their financing philosophy continues on at Richard Carr. They are looking for 100% credit approval, and they say yes when others say no. Perhaps you're not even looking to buy a car. You just want to get your car, your truck, your SUV worked on, oil change, something a little bit more, like, damage from a wreck, something along those lines. Their service department is standing by to keep you on the road, and they, too, are the people that you can count on over at Richard Carr. In business for 24 years in Central Texas, they built a reputation during that time as, yes, the people that you can count on for your automotive needs, run by proud Central Texans and proud Baylor Bears. Log on to richardcarr.com today. Call now or go see them now off Highway 6 at the Imperial exit.
The future's bright, the time is now.
College is what you make it. It's a late night pizza run and all-nighters coding a new project. It's having big dreams and making them a reality. It's a professor who knows your name and your story. It's preparation for your future, your calling, your life. And at Baylor, it's even more. Baylor, where lights shine bright.
Stepping into the boots of a U.S. Army officer can add confidence and leadership skills to your son or daughter's career path. See all the things they can achieve in our boots at GoArmy.com. U.S. Army Waco Recruiting Company, 254-598-8131 or 254-776-1543.
Pizza, burgers, and Bears football. There's no place around Waco that serves them all other than Bubba's 33. Come show your green and gold and enjoy some of Waco's best food and beverages while watching your favorite team, the Bears. When real Bears fans get hungry, Bubba's 33 is the #1 spot for ice-cold drinks, hand-stretched, stone-baked pizzas, and bacon-infused burgers. Join us for indoor or patio dining. Bubba's 33, Waco's restaurant and proud supporter of Baylor Bears football. Sick 'em, Bears.
Where is the best beef in Texas? Your house. When you order from Texas Beef House, unleash the flavor of Texas-raised Wagyu from our pasture to your plate at TexasBeefHouse.com. Samantha Duvall joins us. She's the marketing director who knows all of the specials and also the events coming up. And thank you very much, as always, for your time. So all of these holidays are over. We've hit the meat of, literally, of the summer. And your thoughts about as you hit the month of August and into football season, Samantha?
Football season's right around the corner, so that means it's perfect time for tailgating. The best time to grab our hamburger patties is right now through the end of July. We still have our sale going on with our regular patties and our jalapeno and cheese patties. They're $12 a package, so that's 4 patties to a package. It's perfect for the time for football. Gather all your family around. That way you can grill it up.
Where's the best beef in Texas? Your house. When you order from Texas Beef House, unleash the flavor of Texas-raised Wagyu and how they age it as well. From our pasture to your plate, TexasBeefHouse.com.
There are 26 letters in the alphabet, over 600,000 words in the dictionary, and just 3 of them said together can change everything. Let's order pizza. Those 3 words lead to dough made from scratch and 3 fresh signature cheeses that blanket golden crust in a heavenly melt on Marco's Pizza that'll blow your mind. So visit Marcos.com to order and stop by Marco's Pizza in Belmead, China Spring, Woodway, and in Robinson. Marco's. Pizza lovers get it.
It's time for Paul Catalina's Top 5, brought to you by Texas Beef House. Where's the best beef in Texas? Your house when you order from Texas Beef House. Unleash the flavor of Texas-raised Wagyu. From our pasture to your plate, TexasBeefHouse.com.
Top 5 thoughts on Greg Sankey's comments on the Paul Feinbaum show yesterday, which is the most I'll probably ever talk about something that happened on Feinbaum. But it was very interesting, and went back and listened to it. And, you know, he does, like, he is very politician-like to me in that, and there's not many now, but there were in the days where it made sense, where I would listen to somebody and like 90% of the things they said, I'm like, okay, this guy seems to have a handle on it. And then occasionally they say something, I'm like, well, you know, I don't know about that. That seems like it's a planted statement there. And that was kind of like this, but I did come away learning something from Greg Sankey yesterday, which is what I like when I listen to interviews. Number 5, honestly, the SEC and all this mess could not do anything for a decade, in my opinion, and they'll be fine.
Yep. They're making a bunch of money and running college football in a lot of ways with their wins and losses, or their wins and championships.
I mean, honestly, what do they have to do? Nothing. Just be who you've been.
Yeah, I mean, I think that regionally it makes all the sense in the world. Their additions, unlike the Big Tens, which I understand why they did what they did, but I mean, the SEC is still basically the Southeast, and still room to be even more of the Southeast if they wanted to. But yeah, I don't really see the need to do so. You know, I'm sure that could change at a moment's notice if all of a sudden Florida State got loose of the ACC deal or whoever. But yeah, they could stay pat and to your point, be totally fine.
Yeah, they don't have to do one single thing.
No.
They just need to kind of monitor without letting them know what's going on up in the upper Midwest.
Yeah. Now, number 4, that brings me to this. I am still not totally sure I believe him on adding teams. Like, he didn't say no, never, not ever going to, but he did kind of poo-poo the notion of anybody in pro rata and all that stuff. I do think that if you could add, because there's not many brands out there, really, honestly, like brand names. So if you could add these two that fit into your geographical footprint without you having to be ridiculous, because we're not talking about the SEC adding Oregon. They're already in the Big Ten. We're talking about the SEC adding Clemson and Florida State to their roster. That, to me, would seem like if that became legally untangled, that was something that they would look at.
Well, it's interesting, though, because he talks about how they think everything should calm down, and even at times has kind of discussed how he doesn't like what's happened in the last week, and yet they got who they wanted. In fact, at least twice, right?
But he owned up to. He said that.
He
though.
did.
Like
I
he
know.
said, yeah. He said, like, I know we played a role, and so I appreciate that he's not pretending like the Big Ten's pretending that they didn't kill the Pac.
Yeah.
Like, oh, that wasn't us. I mean, he knows. Like, yeah, we kickstarted the whole dadgum shebang here, like with our move with Oklahoma and Texas. So he wasn't trying to skirt any responsibility for it. But I do think when you start to see just some of the stuff going on, where like the Big 12's killing the Pac potentially in conjunction with the Big, like that's when you're starting to like, I don't know if this is really all that great. And that is a little different than just scooping two dynasty schools or two blue bloods that are clearly wanting out.
The Pac, honestly, I just had this thought. Do you remember in the movie Goodfellas, Craig? I know, Smokey, you probably won't remember this. I know you've seen that movie, but where Ray Liotta tells his wife, like, listen, the only reason you go to jail is if you want to. Yeah. To me, I kind of feel like that is only true in the instance of the Pac-12. Like, they didn't want to, but they did this to themselves. Like,
no,
you can blame the Big Ten. You can blame the Big Ten and Big 12 all you want for the Pac-12's troubles, and they certainly share in the blame of
the TV networks
and TV networks and all that, but the Pac-12 did this to itself. Like, they made themselves vulnerable for this.
Yeah, Pat Jones said that just a little while ago when I read off that quote from whatever that was that he was appearing on. And to this part, I don't believe Greg Sankey. I mean, I do believe that they are fine if nothing changes. I also believe that they are ready to strike if anything changes.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. They're in a great spot. Number 3. I think he's right about reshaping the 12-team playoff. Now, look, he wants to keep it at 12, which they're going to do because they've already made that agreement. Now, I worry about past that 2 years and what they're going to do after that. But they might have to – they got to look at it. If the Pac-12's not going to be there at the beginning of it, they can't just move it down the line, although I think
why would it be difficult, though? If, in fact, they do not remain an autonomy 5, you just add another at-large team, or you look at –
I would like to see that, but...
Or you look at, you look at another team that's outside of the autonomy 5.
They need to
one or the other. That's all you can do.
They need to codify that, though. They need to make sure that they go through and say this is here and this is why. Because part of this was the reason you do this and the reason you let you do the top 6 conference champions, highest ranked conference champions, is because you finally do open it up for someone who's not one of those autonomy 5, so that you can finally look. It helps you put it to rest. If they go years and years and years and one of those non-autonomy 5 schools never wins, then they can be like, well, at least they're in it and we don't have to deal with it anymore. They've got a shot. Here it is, as opposed to the way it was. They don't have to answer the question anymore. But if they take this opportunity to take away those chances for the G5, I think it'd be a bad PR step. But they need to codify all that language to me.
Yeah, I mean, you have to, I think, placate a certain audience because there are a lot of schools that would be left out if you just, bogart your way to 8 Big Ten seeds and 8 SEC seeds, and it's a 17-team playoff because that's what they would like, right?
Yeah.
I know 17-team would not work as a tournament, but you know what I mean. So, when we talked to Mac Rhodes yesterday, he agreed with Greg Sankey as well. I don't know if he would have if this was like right after the Texas-Oklahoma news, broke, but they're in a position now where he seems to be in agreement with that. And so I'd imagine Brett Yormark is as well. To what extent that matters, I think everybody's got to be somewhat on board with each other. So, I don't think there's any doubts they're going to revisit this and reshape it. Just what that looks like on the other side is going to set the table because, that's the thing. We get this expanded playoff. We get it for 2 years. It's not going to go away, but the way it's set up is going to potentially get altered. And so you would think that one's a little bit lengthier than 2 years, and it might be like the table setter for the grand scheme or plan in this whole dadgum ball game.
Number 2, now while he owned up to it, I appreciated him that. I don't think you should take shots at other leagues for expanding because, again, they're trying to keep pace with you, man.
Right, yeah.
You cannot.
Are they trying to keep? Well, I guess keeping pace is what the Big Ten was doing.
Yeah.
Keeping staying alive or survival is what some others are trying to do.
And then keeping pace would be, now that you're alive, you try to keep pace. But they're trying to do that because of what you have done. You have been so successful in winning national championships in your league. And not only that, solidifying your brand so much that even your bad teams don't get as much flack as everybody else's bad teams, that everybody else is chasing you. So if you're McDonald's and you're the biggest thing, don't get pissed off at Wendy's for coming out with a spicy chicken sandwich before you did, man.
Good analogy.
Like, you can't do
it. Last time you had Wendy's.
They're just
like
trying to compete.
Ago.
Yeah.
I think randomly about a month and a half ago, I just said, what the hell? And I stopped and got one of those big damn burgers.
It's good. Well, look,
the fries aren't very good, but I did. I just
was it SEC good or Big Ten good? What was it?
The Wendy's?
Here's the thing. Frosties, love a Frosty.
See, that was actually, I didn't get this last time, but that was not what I remembered when I got it.
Really?
Unfortunately, but that might have been the location.
Yeah.
The Frosty?
It was not quite what I remembered.
If I'm going to get a milkshake, I'm going to Dairy Queen.
Yeah, but see, the Frosty.
A Whataburger.
Yeah, the Frosty's not a milkshake. It's just ice cream. I don't know. It's weird, but it's still.
Hey, Emery, can you put the algorithm out that we mentioned all of them? Although don't mention I didn't like the fries at Wendy's. Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Go ahead. I'm sorry.
Yeah. So anyway, but yes, my point is, look, if you're McDonald's and you came out at your CEO, your shareholder meeting, be like, listen, everything's growing great, and screw Wendy's for this new idea that they had. You're like, well, hey man, like we're doing all right. We don't need to worry about them. Like we're doing fine. So don't do that, Greg Sankey. And at least he did own up to I know we have a part in this.
Right, yeah.
Especially with the Big 12, they have a part of taking 4 of them.
Right. And I initially took that just because I guess I'm in, more thinking the Big 12 side of things was he was taking a shot at your mark again because he had done that previously.
I think in a subtle way wasn't quite as
it was
bad.
Mostly about the Big 10.
Right.
What it was.
Yeah.
And I didn't, initially read it that way, but then I went back and read it again later and I was like, oh no, I think he was more taking a shot at the Big 10. Yeah.
But he wasn't Sankey about a week or two ago. I remember
he took one at your mark.
Another one.
That's why I thought that's what it was again.
Yeah.
I thought he was just doing that again, and I was like, that's weird because when we talked to Brett now we're on first names, Brett, buddy Brett. No, Brett, your market, AT&T Stadium for media days. We talked about the Sankey comment. Remember?
Yeah.
Or was that on air? Or was that off?
Okay,
no,
yeah.
And so he talked about that. So that's why when I first heard, I was like, he's firing another one at him? Like, what is that about? I thought they were cool, but yeah, it's all good.
Yeah, big bucks, Bretty Y.
Yeah.
All right, number one, as we finish this today, he would be a great college football star. I do think it's time for college football to grab one of these guys like Greg Sankey and use their powers for good.
Can they pay him as much as he's making now?
They should. Yes.
I'm sure they
pull
can.
Pull the money together.
Yeah.
Get it done.
Well, right now he's fighting for 16 teams. He would then have to fight for 131.
Yeah, and again, use your powers for good. That's what I think.
It would be nice to have somebody in that position.
If you were more respected, obviously, or carry as big of a stick as he does, and it's hard to argue with the guy. I mean, I know the SEC's got its history that goes way beyond these last 20 years when they've really solidified themselves. I mean, they weren't the best football conference at various points, but they were still the most passionate and rabid and all of that, and to take that league and be a part, along with many, many others in the juggernaut that it is now. I mean, who's to argue with that resume, right? I mean, he knows about putting on a good product in a great league and all those types of things. He knows the inner workings, unlike some outsider that you bring in. It's one thing to do that as a commissioner. It's another thing to do that as a czar type figure. I think you do have to have somebody that is invested in the game, and the universities and things like that. So yeah, he would check a lot of boxes for sure. And I do think that that's overdue. I know there's plenty of candidates that you could throw out there, but he would be one that would make a lot of sense.
All right. Very good, Paul. Very well done. Emery, thank you. Garrett Ross, thank you. Garrett, man, I send you, sometimes it's just insane, 10 to 15 or 20 of those graphics. We didn't even get to all of them, but we appreciate it. Didn't get to Alabama having Pete Rose on campus to talk to athletes about gambling. That might be something we jump in tomorrow. We appreciate you. We appreciate you every single day. Those who watch us, the app, thanks to Alan Samuels, Dodge, Chrysler, Jeep, Ram, Fiat, and our incredible sponsors, Craig Smoak and Paul Catalina. I'm David Smoak. Hit the subscribe button. Hit the like button. Good night. This is 365 Sports.
Ideal MRI